I never thought a funeral would be the beginning of anything. Funerals are endings, after all. The final punctuation mark on a life story. But standing in that cemetery 3 months after burying my husband, watching my father's casket being lowered into Montana soil I had not walked on in 15 years, I felt something shift inside me. Not hope exactly. More like the faint tremor you feel before an earthquake, when the ground beneath your feet remembers it was never quite as solid as you believed. My name is Claire Abbott, and at 56 years old, I was about to learn that life does not care much about your plans. The September wind cut across the hillside cemetery in Whitefish County, sharp enough to make my eyes water. Or maybe that was grief. 3 months earlier, I had stood in a different cemetery in Denver, watching Richard's casket disappear into the earth. Lung cancer. 18 months from diagnosis to death. 18 months of hospitals and experimental treatments and hope draining away like water through a sieve. 18 months of watching the man I had loved since I was 24 years old turn into someone I barely recognized. And now my father, James Mitchell, 82 years old, dead of a massive stroke in his sleep, alone in the ranch house where I had grown up, alone because I had not spoken to him in 15 years. The guilt sat in my chest like a stone. My daughter Sophie stood beside me, her hand on my elbow. 28 years old, a junior associate at a law firm in Boston, wearing a black suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment back in Denver. My son Ben was on my other side, 25, wearing jeans and a borrowed blazer because he had driven straight from Colorado when I called him. My children, both of them looking at me with concern, like I might shatter at any moment. Maybe I would. The minister spoke words I did not hear, something about ashes and dust and resurrection. The same words he had probably spoken over my mother's grave 8 years ago. I had come to that funeral too, stood in this same cemetery on this same hillside. My father had looked at me then, said maybe 10 words total. Thank you for coming. Your mother would have appreciated it. That was all. 15 years of silence, and that was all he could give me. I had not understood then. Standing here now, I wondered if I understood any better. When it ended, when the last prayer had been said and the crowd began to drift away, an elderly man in a weathered Carhartt jacket approached me. He had a kind face, deeply lined, and eyes the color of the Montana sky. "Mrs. Abbott," he said, "I am Tom Walsh. I worked your father's ranch for 20 years. I am real sorry for your loss." I shook his hand. "Thank you. Your dad was a good man, fair, honest, stubborn as hell, pardon my French, but good." He paused, seeming to weigh his next words. "He talked about you sometimes, more than you might think." Something in my chest tightened. Did he? Said he made mistakes, said he hoped you were happy. Tom's eyes were steady on mine. Wanted you to know the ranch is in good shape. He kept it up nice. For you, I reckon. Before I could respond, a woman appeared at my elbow. 50s, blonde hair styled in a perfect bob, wearing a white polo shirt with an embroidered logo I could not quite make out. Her smile was bright and practiced. "Mrs. Abbott, I am so sorry to intrude at such a difficult time. My name is Vanessa Sterling. I am president of the Glacier Ridge Estates Homeowners Association." I stared at her. I am sorry, what? Glacier Ridge Estates, the residential community that borders your father's property. Her smile never wavered. I wanted to express my condolences. Your father was a unique man. There was something in the way she said unique that made the words sound less than complimentary. "Thank you," I said, because I could not think of anything else to say. "I know this is not the time," Vanessa continued, her voice dropping to a confidential tone. "But when you are ready, we need to discuss the road situation. Cottonwood Trail. I am sure your father mentioned it." My father had mentioned nothing. We had not spoken in 15 years. "What about it?" I asked. Well, it runs through your property, of course. Our residents have been using it for decades. Just a formality, really, but we need to formalize the access agreement. Nothing complicated. I will give you my card. She pressed a business card into my hand. Call me when you have had time to settle in. No rush. Well, not too much rush. She laughed, a bright tinkling sound. We do need to resolve it fairly soon. You understand? I did not understand, but she was already walking away, her heels clicking on the pavement. Sophie leaned in close. What was that about? I have no idea. 1 week later, I sat in a lawyer's office in Billings, listening to a stranger tell me I had inherited 160 acres of Montana land I did not want. The lawyer was young, maybe 30, with earnest eyes and a folder full of documents. Your father's will is straightforward, Mrs. Abbott. The entire estate goes to you. The ranch, the land, all assets. What about debts? I asked. My voice sounded hollow in the sterile office. Minimal. Your father owned the property outright. No mortgage. Taxes are current. There are some outstanding bills, utilities, that sort of thing. Maybe $5,000 total. I closed my eyes. Back in Denver, I had $180,000 in medical debt from Richard's cancer treatment. Our suburban house had been refinanced 3 times and was underwater by $40,000. My retirement account held exactly $85,000. I was 56 years old. I had quit my teaching job 2 years ago to take care of Richard full-time. I had no income, no prospects, no plan. And now I owned 160 acres in Montana. There is one more thing, the lawyer said. He pulled an envelope from the folder. Your father left this for you, with instructions that I give it to you personally. My father's handwriting on the envelope, spidery and uncertain. My hands shook as I opened it. The letter inside was short. Claire, I know we have not spoken since your mother died. I know you blame me for that. Maybe you are right, too. I was a difficult man and I failed you as a father. But this land is all I have to give. Do not sell it quickly. There is something you need to understand first. The road is worth more than you think. Dad. I read it 3 times. The road is worth more than you think. What road? I asked the lawyer. He looked uncomfortable. I am not sure. Your father did not elaborate. I folded the letter carefully and put it back in the envelope. My father had always spoken in riddles. Practical riddles, usually about fixing things or handling livestock or reading weather, but riddles nonetheless. I need to see the property, I said. Sophie was furious when I told her my plan. Mom, you cannot be serious. Drive to Montana to look at some ranch you have not seen in 15 years. You need to sell it and come back to Denver. Pay off the medical debt. Figure out your next move. We were sitting in my kitchen in Denver, the house Richard and I had bought 30 years ago when Sophie was born. The house that now felt like a museum to a life that no longer existed. Everything in it reminded me of Richard. The coffee maker he used every morning. The reading chair where he fell asleep every night. The bathroom where I had given him his chemotherapy pills and held his hair when he vomited. I need to see it, I said again, just to understand what I am dealing with. Then I am coming with you, Sophie said. You should not drive 8 hours alone. I will go with Mom, Ben said from the doorway. He had been staying with me since the funeral, sleeping in his old bedroom, trying to fill the silence in the house. You have work, Soph. I can take the time. Sophie looked like she wanted to argue, but her phone buzzed with what was probably the 100th email of the day. She was brilliant, my daughter. Driven. Practical. Everything I had raised her to be. And right now, she looked at me like I was a problem to be solved. Fine, she said. But Ben, make her promise she will sell it. We can use the money to pay off the debt and set Mom up somewhere stable. Maybe a condo, something manageable. Ben met my eyes across the kitchen. My son was gentler than his sister, more willing to sit with uncertainty. "Let us just go look first," he said. We left Denver on a Tuesday morning in late September. Ben drove my aging Honda while I sat in the passenger seat and watched Colorado turn into Wyoming turn into Montana. The landscape changed gradually, then all at once. Flat plains giving way to foothills giving way to mountains that took my breath away. I had forgotten how beautiful Montana was. We drove through small towns with names I half remembered, stopped for gas and terrible coffee. Ben tried to make conversation about his job, his girlfriend, his thoughts about grad school. I made appropriate noises, but mostly I just watched the mountains grow larger on the horizon. "Do you remember the ranch at all?" Ben asked as we crossed into Whitefish County. "Some," I said. "We left when I was 24. Your grandpa did not approve of your father, thought he was too city, too soft. We fought about it and I chose Richard." "Did you regret it?" "No, that much was true. Richard had been a good man, a good husband, a good father. But I regretted losing my father over it." The ranch appeared around a curve in the road exactly the way I remembered it. A long gravel driveway leading to a log house with a green metal roof. Behind it, 160 acres of pine forest and meadow stretching toward the mountains. The Flathead Range in the distance, snow already dusting the peaks. Ben whistled low. "Mom, this is gorgeous." It was. Even with the house looking tired and the barn needing paint, it was gorgeous. We parked and got out. The silence hit me first. After years in Denver suburbs, the absence of traffic noise felt almost oppressive. Just wind in the pines and the distant cry of a hawk. The house was locked. I used the key the lawyer had given me and pushed open the door. Inside, everything was exactly as I remembered and completely foreign. The same furniture, the same rugs, the same wood stove in the corner of the living room, but covered in dust and absence. My father had lived here alone for 8 years after my mother died. 8 years of silence and solitude. I walked through the rooms like a ghost. My old bedroom, unchanged. The kitchen where my mother had taught me to can vegetables. The living room where my father used to sit in his recliner and read the newspaper cover to cover every evening. Ben found me in the kitchen, staring at the old photographs stuck to the refrigerator with magnets. Photos of me as a child. My parents' wedding picture. One photo of me and Richard on our wedding day, grainy and faded. "He kept your picture," Ben said softly. I could not speak. "Mom, look at this." Ben was standing by the kitchen window, pointing outside. "That road, Cottonwood Trail, it goes right through the property." I joined him at the window. A gravel road wound through the pines, disappearing around a bend. Well maintained. Recent grading marks still visible. "Where does it go?" I asked. "Let me check." Ben pulled out his phone, squinting at the GPS map. "Looks like it connects to Highway 93 on one end and some kind of housing development on the other. Glacier Ridge Estates." The name clicked. Vanessa Sterling, the HOA president at my father's funeral. "We need to look at the property boundaries," I said. It took us an hour to find the relevant documents in my father's filing cabinet. Deed, survey maps, property tax records, and there it was. Cottonwood Trail, 1.5 miles of gravel road running directly through the center of my property, connecting the county highway to Glacier Ridge Estates. A gated community of 68 homes, no other access. Ben was reading something on his phone, his expression growing more serious. "Mom, I think I found something. This is from the county property records. Glacier Ridge Estates was built in 1988. Looks like the developer tried to buy an easement from Grandpa James for access, but there is no recorded easement in the county files." "What does that mean?" I am not sure, but I think it means Grandpa never sold them access rights. They have just been using the road anyway. I sat down heavily at the kitchen table. The road is worth more than you think. Ben, call that lawyer in Billings. I need to understand what we are dealing with here. While Ben made calls, I walked outside, followed Cottonwood Trail on foot, my boots crunching on gravel. The road was well maintained. Good drainage, recent gravel. Someone had been taking care of it. At the eastern edge of the property, I could see the entrance to Glacier Ridge Estates. A stone archway with the community name in bronze letters. Beyond it, large houses on manicured lots. Mountain views, privacy, money. And the only way in or out was through my land. I stood there for a long time, watching cars come and go. A woman in a Mercedes, a man in a pickup truck, a teenager on a bicycle. None of them looking at me, none of them thinking about whose land they were crossing. My phone rang. Sophie. Did you see it? She asked without preamble. Yes. And what are you thinking? There is a realtor in Whitefish I found online. She says land like that is worth maybe $800,000. You could sell it, pay off all the debt, have enough left over to live on for a few years while you figure things out. $800,000. It sounded like a fantasy. Mom, are you there? I am here, I said. Sophie, I need to think about this. What is there to think about? You are 56 years old with no income and massive debt. This is the solution. She was right. Of course she was right. Sophie was always right. Let me talk to a lawyer first, I said, about the road situation. What road situation? I explained. The HOA, the lack of recorded easement, the fact that 68 families had apparently been using my father's land for 35 years without legal permission. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Mom, Sophie said slowly, her lawyer brain clearly working. Do you know what this means? You own the only access to an entire neighborhood. You have leverage. The word felt ugly in my mouth. Sophie, I cannot just cut off 68 families from their homes. I am not saying cut them off. I am saying negotiate. They need access. You own the access. That is worth money, potentially a lot of money. That feels wrong. What feels wrong is you being broke and scared at 56 because you spent your entire life taking care of other people. Sophie's voice was sharp. Dad's career, us kids, Dad's illness. You gave up everything. You are allowed to take care of yourself now. After we hung up, I stood on that road for another 20 minutes. The sun was setting behind the mountains, turning the sky orange and purple. In Denver, I would be making dinner right now, sitting alone in that kitchen full of ghosts, trying to figure out how to make $85,000 last until I could find a job, if anyone would hire a 56-year-old former teacher who had been out of the workforce for 2 years. Or I could stay here. The thought came unbidden and terrifying. Stay here, in this house, on this land. Find out what my father meant about the road being worth more than I thought. I was still standing there when a silver SUV pulled up beside me. The window rolled down. Vanessa Sterling. Mrs. Abbott, she said with that same bright smile. I thought that was you. Have you had a chance to settle in? I am not settled, I said. I am trying to understand the situation with the road. Of course. It is quite simple, really. Your father allowed our community to use Cottonwood Trail for access to Glacier Ridge. Very generous of him. We just need to formalize that arrangement now that he has passed. Make it official. Official how? A permanent easement agreement. My attorney has already drawn up the paperwork. No cost to you, naturally. Just confirms the status quo. She reached across and pulled a folder from her passenger seat. I took the liberty of bringing a copy. You can have your lawyer look it over, of course, but it is very straightforward. I took the folder but did not open it. Ms. Sterling, I am going to need some time to review this with my attorney. I do not sign anything without understanding it fully. Her smile flickered, just for a second. Mrs. Abbott, I hope you understand that our entire community depends on this road. 68 families, children who need to get to school, people who need to get to work, emergency vehicles, we need guaranteed access. I understand that, I said, but I need to understand my father's intentions and my rights. Your rights, she said it like the words tasted bad. Mrs. Abbott, your father was a reasonable man. I am sure you will be equally reasonable. Our community has used this road for 35 years. That establishes certain legal precedents. I had no idea if that was true, but something in her tone made me want to push back. I will have my attorney contact you, I said. She stared at me for a long moment. Then her smile returned, bright and cold. Of course, I look forward to hearing from them. She handed me a business card. My direct line, please do not wait too long. We really do need to resolve this quickly. She drove away. I stood there holding her business card and the folder of easement paperwork I had no intention of signing, without understanding what I was agreeing to. Ben came out of the house as the sun finally dropped behind the mountains. I talked to the lawyer in Billings, he said. He is referring us to someone who specializes in property law, a woman named Jordan Harper. She is in Kalispell. He says she is the best. Did he say anything about the road situation? He said do not sign anything, and that we probably have more leverage than we think. Ben paused. Mom, what are you thinking? I looked at the house, at the land, at the road winding through my property, at the mountains turning purple in the twilight. I am thinking your grandfather left me this for a reason, I said, and I owe it to him to find out what that reason was before I sell it. What about Sophie? She is going to push you to sell. Sophie can push all she wants, I said. For the first time in my life, I am going to make a decision for myself, not for my husband, not for my children, for me. The words felt strange in my mouth, foreign, almost rebellious. But they also felt right. We spent that night in the ranch house. Ben took my old bedroom. I took my parents' room, sleeping in the bed where my father had died. I should have felt strange about it, but I did not. Instead, I felt something I had not felt in months. Not quite peace, but the possibility of it. In the morning, I called Jordan Harper. She had a voice like whiskey, smooth but with an edge. Mrs. Abbott, I reviewed the preliminary information. I would like to meet with you as soon as possible. Can you come to my office in Kalispell today? Yes, I said. Her office was in a renovated brick building downtown. She was younger than I expected. Maybe 48, short dark hair going gray at the temples, practical clothes, shrewd eyes. We shook hands, and she gestured to a chair. Tell me everything, she said. I told her about my father's death, the inheritance, the letter about the road, Vanessa Sterling and her easement agreement, the fact that Glacier Ridge had apparently been using the road for 35 years without recorded permission. Jordan listened without interrupting. Then she opened a laptop and started typing. Give me 20 minutes, she said. I waited, drank terrible coffee from a machine in her waiting room, tried not to think about the medical bills waiting in Denver, tried not to think about Sophie's disappointment when I told her I was not selling immediately. Jordan called me back into her office. She had printouts spread across her desk. Mrs. Abbott, your father was a very smart man. Look at this. She pointed to a letter dated 1988. This is from the developer who built Glacier Ridge, Harold Whitmore. He offered your father $75,000 for a permanent easement across the southern portion of his property. Your father declined. Why? This is why. She showed me another letter, dated 1989. My father's response. I will allow your residents to use Cottonwood Trail at my discretion as a courtesy. This does not constitute a permanent easement or right of way. This permission may be revoked at any time. James Mitchell. I read it twice. What does that mean? It means your father gave them permission to use the road, but specifically stated it was not a permanent easement. That is critical. If he had just allowed them to use it without saying anything, they might be able to claim what is called a prescriptive easement. Basically, if you use someone's land openly and continuously for long enough, you can sometimes gain legal rights to keep using it. But your father explicitly gave them permission and stated it was revocable. That negates any prescriptive easement claim. My heart was beating faster, so they have no legal right to the road. Correct. They have been using it as a courtesy. A courtesy your father could have revoked at any time, and now that courtesy has passed to you. What does that mean for me? Jordan leaned back in her chair. It means you have options. Option 1, you grant them a permanent easement for free. Be nice. Let them keep using the road forever at no cost. Or Option 2, you charge them for the easement. You own the only access to 68 homes. That is extremely valuable. Fair market rate for something like this would be anywhere from $1,200 to $2,000 per household per year. I did the math in my head. 1,200 times 68. That is over $80,000 a year. $81,600 if we charge $1,200 per household. You would also charge for road maintenance, since their traffic is what damages the road. Maybe another $15,000 annually. We are looking at close to $100,000 per year, potentially more. I felt dizzy. $100,000 a year, passive income, for as long as I own the property. They will never agree to that, I said. They do not have a choice. Jordan's expression was neutral, professional. Mrs. Abbott, this is not about being greedy or vindictive. This is about fair market value for your property. They need something you own. You are entitled to charge for it. But these are people, families. Some of them are probably elderly, on fixed incomes. Then we build in a hardship provision. Households over 65 with income below a certain threshold pay a reduced rate, maybe $600 a year instead of $1,200. We can structure it fairly, but you do not have to give it away for free. I stood up and walked to the window. Kalispell spread out below, mountains beyond. Somewhere out there, my father's ranch, the road. 68 families who had no idea their lives were about to change. What would your father want? Jordan asked quietly. I turned to face her. I have no idea. We did not speak for 15 years. Then what do you want? What did I want? I was 56 years old. My husband was dead. My retirement was gone. I had $180,000 in debt. I had no job and no prospects. I had spent my entire adult life making sure everyone else was taken care of. Richard's career, my children's education, my father-in-law's final years, Richard's illness. What did I want? I want to not be terrified, I said. I want to not wake up at 3 in the morning panicking about money. I want to be able to breathe. Jordan nodded. Then let me draft an easement agreement. We will make it fair. We will include hardship provisions for people who genuinely cannot afford it, but we will charge fair market value. And if they refuse? Then they do not get to use the road. Simple as that. But they will not refuse, Mrs. Abbott. They cannot. They are landlocked without that road. They will fight at first. They will be angry. But eventually they will pay, because they have no other choice. I thought about Vanessa Sterling and her bright, cold smile, about her folder of pre-prepared easement paperwork, about the way she had said our community needs guaranteed access. They needed the road. I owned the road. Draft the agreement, I said. That evening, back at the ranch, I called Sophie. I am not selling, I said before she could speak. Not yet. Mom, we talked about this. You talked about it, I listened. Now I am making a decision. I explained about the easement situation, the lack of legal agreement, Jordan Harper's advice. Sophie was quiet for a long moment. Mom, that is almost $100,000 a year. I know. That is more than Dad made most years. I know. You could pay off the medical debt in 2 years, have income for the rest of your life. I know. Another long pause. What did you tell the lawyer? I told her to draft an easement agreement, fair market rate, $1,200 per household per year, with a hardship provision for people over 65. Mom, Sophie's voice was strange. I am proud of you. I had not expected that. Really? Really, this is you taking care of yourself, finally. After we hung up, I walked outside. The sun was setting again, turning the mountains gold. Ben was sitting on the porch steps, a beer in hand. He handed me one without speaking. We sat there together, mother and son, watching the light fade. You are really going to do this? He asked. I think so, yes. Grandpa would be proud. I was not sure about that, but maybe it did not matter. Maybe this was not about making my father proud. Maybe it was about finally, at 56, learning to stand on my own 2 feet. 3 days later, Jordan sent me the draft easement agreement. It was 15 pages of legal language that made my head hurt, but the core terms were clear. Annual easement fee, $1,200 per household. Total, $81,600. Annual road maintenance fee, $15,000. Total annual payment, $96,600. Paid in monthly installments of $8,050. Households over 65 with annual income below $40,000 qualified for 50% reduction. $600 per year instead of $1,200. The agreement was for 20 years, renewable. I, Claire Abbott, retained full ownership and control of Cottonwood Trail. The HOA could not restrict my access or use in any way. I read it 5 times. Showed it to Ben, showed it to Sophie over video call. It is fair, Sophie said. More than fair with the hardship provision. They are going to hate me, I said. Probably, Sophie agreed. But that is not your problem. You are not doing anything wrong. I signed the document and sent it back to Jordan. I will send this to the HOA's attorney, Jordan said. Be prepared for pushback. Significant pushback. The pushback came within 24 hours. Vanessa Sterling called my cell phone at 7 in the morning. I was drinking coffee on the porch, watching the sunrise, when her name flashed on my screen. Mrs. Abbott, her voice was tight. I received the most extraordinary document from your attorney yesterday. The easement agreement, yes. You cannot be serious. $96,000 per year. That is absurd. That is extortion. I kept my voice calm. Ms. Sterling, that is fair market value for an easement across private property. My attorney researched comparable situations. Your attorney is taking advantage of you. Mrs. Abbott, we have been using that road for 35 years. Your father never charged us a penny. My father gave you courtesy access. That courtesy has ended. If you want continued access, you need to pay for it. Do you have any idea how much this will cost our residents? $1,200 per household per year. Some of our residents are elderly, on fixed incomes. They cannot afford this. I have a hardship provision. People over 65 with low incomes pay half that amount. Silence on the other end. Then, in a different voice, quieter and more dangerous. Mrs. Abbott, I do not think you understand what you are doing. Our community will not stand for this. We will fight you. That is your right, but you are fighting a legal easement agreement for access to property I own. You will lose. We will see about that. She hung up. My hand was shaking as I set down the phone. Ben came out onto the porch. Was that the HOA lady? Yes. How did it go? About as well as expected. I tried to smile. She threatened to fight me. Are you scared? I thought about it. Was I scared? Yes. Terrified, actually. I had never been in a legal dispute in my life. Had never deliberately made people angry. Had spent 56 years trying to keep peace, make everyone comfortable, avoid conflict. But I was also 56 years old with $180,000 in debt, and no other way to survive. Yes, I said, but I am doing it anyway. Over the next week, 3 more members of the Glacier Ridge HOA board came to my door. 2 men and another woman, all of them trying to convince me to withdraw the easement agreement. This is going to destroy property values, one of the men said. He was maybe 55, wearing an expensive polo shirt and the kind of watch that costs more than a car. People buy here for the exclusivity, the privacy. When word gets out that the access road is suddenly costing $1,200 a year, property values will tank. Then you should have secured a legal easement 35 years ago, I said. The woman, 60-ish with carefully maintained blonde highlights, tried a different approach. Mrs. Abbott, many of us are retirees. We have limited income. This fee is a real hardship. People over 65 with income under $40,000 pay $600 a year. That is $50 a month. Still, it is money we did not budget for. It feels punitive. I looked at her carefully. She was wearing diamond earrings and what looked like a Burberry jacket. It is not punitive, I said. It is business. You use my land, I charge you for it. That is how property rights work. They left unsatisfied. That night, someone slashed both rear tires on my car. I found them the next morning. Clean cuts, deliberate, a message. Ben was furious. We are calling the sheriff. And tell them what? That someone in a neighborhood of 68 houses might have vandalized my car. They will never find out who did it. So we just let them get away with it. No, we install security cameras, and we document everything. I drove into town on my spare tire and bought 4 cameras at the hardware store. Caleb Torres, the man who had spoken to me at my father's funeral, was working behind the counter. Mrs. Abbott, he said, those are good cameras, planning on doing some surveillance. Someone slashed my tires last night. His expression darkened. Let me guess, this is about the easement situation. Word had spread fast. How did you know about that? Small community, word gets around. He rang up the cameras. For what it is worth, I think you are doing the right thing. Your father let people use that road out of kindness. That does not mean you have to. Not everyone agrees with you. Not everyone matters. He handed me the receipt. I worked for your father off and on for 20 years. Maintained buildings, fixed fences, that kind of thing. He talked about you sometimes. Wished you two had not been estranged. Something in my chest tightened. Did he say why we were? Said he was a stubborn old man who drove you away. Said it was his biggest regret. I had to look away, blink hard. He also said, Caleb continued quietly, that he was leaving you the ranch because you were going to need it. Said you gave up too much for other people and it was time you had something of your own. He wanted you to have security, independence. I looked at this man I barely knew. He said that. Yes, ma'am. I drove back to the ranch with tears running down my face, pulled over twice because I could not see the road. My father, the silent, stubborn man who had not approved of my marriage, who had let 15 years pass without trying to reconcile, who had died alone in that house without ever telling me he was proud of me or loved me or wanted me to be happy. That man had left me 160 acres and a road that could save my life. Back at the ranch, Ben and I installed the cameras, one at each corner of the house, one pointing at the driveway, one covering the section of Cottonwood Trail closest to the house. If anyone comes back, we will have video, Ben said. That night, I could not sleep. I lay in my father's bed and stared at the ceiling and thought about the choices that had led me here. Marrying Richard at 24, moving to Denver, teaching elementary school for 15 years before Sophie was born, quitting to raise my children, going back to teaching part-time when they were in high school, quitting again to take care of Richard. 56 years old, and I had never lived alone, never made a major decision entirely on my own, never had to. And now here I was, in a house that felt like a stranger's, on land I barely remembered, about to charge 68 families for access to a road I had not even known I owned a month ago. The HOA called an emergency meeting. I found out about it when Vanessa Sterling sent me a formal notice by certified mail. Glacier Ridge Estates Emergency Community Meeting to discuss the proposed easement agreement and potential legal responses. All residents urged to attend. The meeting was at their clubhouse. I was not invited. But Ben went. He just showed up and sat in the back row, and no one stopped him. When he came back to the ranch that night, he looked shaken. Mom, it was brutal. There were maybe 90 people there. Vanessa told them you are demanding almost $100,000 a year. She made it sound like you are trying to extort them. People were furious. What did they say? A lot of them wanted to sue you. Some guy stood up and said you are just a greedy widow trying to profit off your father's generosity. He got a standing ovation. I felt sick. But then, Ben continued, this older woman stood up. I think her name was Margaret. She asked Vanessa if you really have a hardship provision for seniors. Vanessa had to admit you do. Margaret pointed out that means elderly residents on fixed incomes only pay $600 a year, $50 a month. She said that is less than a cable bill. What did Vanessa say? She tried to downplay it, but Margaret would not let it go. She asked why Vanessa had not mentioned the hardship provision before, said it seemed like Vanessa was deliberately trying to make you sound worse than you are. I leaned forward. What happened then? The room split. Half the people were still angry at you, but the other half started questioning whether Vanessa was being completely honest. It got messy. They finally agreed to hire a lawyer and explore their legal options, but it was not unanimous. How long do we have before they respond formally? Vanessa said 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I spent those 2 weeks reading my father's journals. I found them in a box in the attic, 20 years of daily entries, some short, some long, all in his cramped handwriting. I started with the year I left, 1994. June 15th. Claire came to visit today, told me she is marrying that Denver boy, Richard. I do not like him, too soft, too city. I told her not to do it. We fought. She left crying. Mary says I was too hard on her. Mary is probably right. June 20th. Claire called, said they are getting married in August, Said I am not invited unless I can be supportive. I cannot. I will not watch my daughter make a mistake. August 7th. Claire got married today. I was not there. Mary went. Came back crying. Said Claire looked beautiful. Said she asked about me. I should have gone. I am a stubborn old fool. I put the journal down and cried. The next entry was 6 months later. February 3rd. Mary says Claire is pregnant. We are going to be grandparents. I should call her, congratulate her. But I do not know how to fix what I broke. Pride is a terrible thing. The entries continued. Years of wanting to reach out and not knowing how. Years of Mary begging him to call me. Years of him sitting in this house, alone with his regret. Then the entries from 2005, the year my mother died. March 11th, Mary died today, lung cancer. She went fast at the end. Claire came to the funeral, stood far away from me. I tried to talk to her, but I did not know what to say. I think I said something about Mary appreciating her coming. That is all. My wife is dead and my daughter will not speak to me, and I have no one to blame but myself. I could not read any more that night. But the next day, I forced myself to continue. Entries from 2010, 2015, 2020. He wrote about me, not every day but often, wondering what I was doing, if I was happy, if my children were healthy, if Richard was treating me well. He wrote about the ranch, about wanting to leave it to me, about hoping I would understand someday why he had been the way he was. And then, in 2023, 6 months before he died. January 8th, saw the doctor today. He says it is my heart. Could be weeks, could be months, could be a year. I am not afraid of dying, but I am afraid of dying without making things right with Claire. I updated my will today. Everything goes to her. The land, the house, everything. I know she will probably sell it, but I hope she does not. I hope she keeps it. I hope she finds what I found here, peace, purpose, a place to belong. I could not give her that when I was alive. Maybe I can in death. I love you, Claire Bear. I always did. Your stubborn old father. Claire Bear. He had called me that when I was little. I had forgotten. I sat on the floor of the attic with my father's journals spread around me, and I grieved. Not just for him, for us. For the 15 years we lost because neither of us knew how to apologize. When I finally went back downstairs, I found Ben in the kitchen making dinner. "Mom," he said, looking at my face, "are you okay?" "No," I said, "but I will be." I picked up my phone and called Sophie. "I read Dad's journals," I said when she answered. "All of them. And he loved me. He wanted me to have this place, not to sell it, to keep it, to use it." Sophie was quiet for a moment. "What are you saying, Mom?" "I am saying I am not selling the ranch. I am staying. I am going through with the easement agreement, and I am going to make a life here." "Mom, are you sure? This is a huge change. You are walking into a legal fight with an entire community." "I know, but for the first time in my life, Sophie, I am doing something just for me. Not for your father, not for you and Ben. For me. And it is terrifying and it feels selfish and I am probably going to make mistakes. But I am doing it anyway." Another pause. Then Sophie said something I did not expect. "Good, it is about time." The HOA's response came exactly 2 weeks later, a formal letter from their attorney, Brendan Cross, Esquire. They rejected the easement agreement. They claimed prescriptive easement rights based on 35 years of continuous use. They threatened litigation if I did not grant them permanent free access within 30 days. Jordan Harper called me after she received a copy of the letter. "They are bluffing," she said. "The prescriptive easement claim will not hold up. Your father's letters prove he gave permission, which negates prescriptive rights. But they are hoping you will cave rather than fight." "I am not caving." "Good, because I think we can win this. but it is going to get ugly first. She was right. Over the next month, the harassment escalated. Someone left dog feces in my mailbox. My trash cans were tipped over repeatedly. Cars blocked my driveway. I received anonymous letters calling me greedy, selfish, cruel. The security cameras caught most of it. Teenage boys on the mailbox incident. Unknown vehicles on the driveway blocking. Nothing I could prove in court, but enough to document a pattern. Then one night in late November, I woke to the smell of smoke. I ran downstairs in my nightgown and bare feet. The barn was on fire. Not the whole barn, just one corner. Like someone had started a small fire and then fled when they realized how fast it would spread. Ben and I fought it with garden hoses until the volunteer fire department arrived. They put it out before it spread to the main structure. But the damage was done. $10,000 in repairs, the fire chief estimated. The sheriff came, looked at the scene, looked at me. Mrs. Abbott, any idea who might have done this? I thought about the 68 households who wanted me gone. About the angry faces at the HOA meeting Ben had described. About Vanessa Sterling and her bright, cold smile. It could be anyone, I said. But I knew, and they knew I knew. The next day, I called an emergency meeting with Jordan Harper. I want to press charges, I said. This is arson. This is attempted intimidation. I want whoever did this prosecuted. Do you have evidence? Security camera footage shows someone approaching the barn around 2 a.m. Too dark to identify them. But it is clear they started the fire deliberately. Jordan nodded slowly. We will report it, but Claire, I have to warn you. This is going to get worse before it gets better. They are testing you, seeing if you will break. I will not break. Good, because we have a court date in 3 weeks. The HOA is seeking a preliminary injunction to prevent you from restricting access while the legal case proceeds. We need to be ready. I spent those 3 weeks preparing. Jordan coached me on what to expect in court. We gathered evidence. My father's letters, the property deed, survey maps, county records showing no recorded easement. And I read more of my father's journals, looking for strength in the words of a man who had been stubborn enough to refuse a developer's money, even when he could have used it. May 1989. That developer came back today, Whitmore, offered me $75,000 for an easement across the southern meadow, told him no. He said I was being unreasonable. I said I am being careful. Once I sell access, I lose control. I told him his people can use the road as a courtesy, but I am not signing away my rights to my own land. He left angry. I do not care. This land is all I have. I will not give away pieces of it. My father had known exactly what he was doing. He had protected the land, protected his rights, and ultimately protected me. Now it was my turn to protect what he had left behind. The court hearing was in Kalispell, County Courthouse, a preliminary hearing to determine if the HOA had grounds for an injunction. I wore my best dress, black, conservative, tried not to look like the villain Vanessa Sterling had made me out to be. The courtroom was packed, 68 households. Most of them had come to watch, to show support for their side, to glare at me. I sat next to Jordan at the plaintiff's table, tried to keep my hands from shaking. The HOA's attorney, Brendan Cross, presented first. He argued that 35 years of continuous use established clear prescriptive easement rights. He presented witnesses, residents who testified about using the road daily for decades, about their children growing up using that road to get to school, about ambulances using it when there were emergencies. He made it sound like I was trying to cut off oxygen. Then Jordan stood up. She was calm, professional, methodical. She presented my father's letters, showed the judge where my father had explicitly stated the access was permissive and revocable, explained how that single phrase negated any prescriptive easement claim. She presented the property deed, the survey maps, the complete absence of any recorded easement in 35 years of county records. "Your Honor," she said, "the law is clear. Mrs. Abbott owns this road. The defendants have been using it as a courtesy, not as a right. Mrs. Abbott is not denying them access. She is simply requiring them to pay fair market value for continued access. That is her legal right as a property owner." The judge, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and sharp eyes, listened to everything. Then she looked at me. "Mrs. Abbott, stand up, please." I stood. My legs were shaking. "Mrs. Abbott, you understand that if I grant this injunction, it will require you to allow continued free access while this case proceeds through the courts. That could take years. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about my father, about the journals, about the words he had written in his final months. I hope she keeps it. I hope she finds what I found here. Peace, purpose, a place to belong. "Your Honor," I said, "I am prepared to defend my property rights for as long as it takes." She nodded. "Sit down." We waited while she reviewed her notes. 5 minutes, 10, 15. Finally, she looked up. "I am denying the injunction. Mrs. Abbott has presented compelling evidence that no permanent easement exists. The defendants may continue to use the road pending the outcome of the full trial, but Mrs. Abbott is entitled to charge reasonable fees for that use. I am setting the temporary fee at $1,000 per household per year, payable monthly, until this matter is resolved." The courtroom erupted. Shouting, anger, Vanessa Sterling on her feet, yelling something I could not hear over the noise. The judge banged her gavel. "Order! I will have order or I will clear this courtroom." Gradually, the noise subsided. "We will reconvene for a full hearing in 90 days. Both parties are ordered to attempt mediation in the meantime. Court is adjourned." Jordan leaned over to me. "We won," she said quietly. I nodded, but I did not feel like I had won anything. I felt like I had just painted a target on my back. As we left the courthouse, people from Glacier Ridge surrounded us, shouting, accusing me of being greedy, heartless, a terrible person. Security had to escort us to Jordan's car. "Are you okay?" she asked once we were safely inside. "No," I said honestly, "but I will be." On the drive back to the ranch, my phone rang. Sophie. "Mom, are you okay? Ben told me what happened." "I am fine. The judge ruled in our favor. They have to start paying while the case proceeds." "Mom, be careful. These people sound dangerous. The fire, the harassment, this is serious." "I know." "Maybe you should come back to Denver for a while. Let things cool down." I looked out the window at the mountains, at the vast Montana sky, at the land that was mine now, whether anyone liked it or not. "No," I said, "I am staying. This is my home now." Because somewhere between my father's death and this moment, between reading his journals and standing in that courtroom, I had made a choice. I was not running anymore, not from conflict, not from difficulty, not from the life I had been too afraid to claim. I was 56 years old. Winter came to Montana like a fist closing around the valley. The first snow fell in early December, 3 weeks after the court hearing. I woke to a world transformed, white silence pressing against the windows. The mountains disappeared into low clouds. Cottonwood Trail became a ribbon of pristine snow winding through the pines, unmarked except for the tracks of deer and elk crossing in the pre-dawn darkness. I stood at the kitchen window with my hands wrapped around a coffee mug, watching the flakes fall. I had forgotten what real winter looked like. Denver had snow, sure, but nothing like this. Nothing that made you feel so small and so aware of how thin the walls were between you and the wild. Ben had gone back to Colorado 2 weeks earlier. His girlfriend needed him. His life was there. I understood. But the house felt enormous without him. Every creak and groan of the old logs settling seemed amplified in the quiet. My phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Sophie. "Mom, did you get the first payment yet?" I checked my bank account. There it was, $8,050, deposited 3 days ago. The first monthly installment from Glacier Ridge Estates. $1,000 per household per year, divided by 12 months. 68 households, minus the ones who qualified for the hardship rate. I stared at that number for a long time. More money than I had seen in a single deposit since Richard's last paycheck before he got too sick to work. I texted back, yes, it came through. Her response was immediate. "How do you feel?" I did not know how to answer that. Relieved, guilty, powerful, terrified, all of it at once. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Not Sophie, an unknown local number. I answered cautiously. "Hello." "Mrs. Abbott, this is Margaret Hayes. We met briefly at the community meeting. I am calling because I wanted to apologize." I remembered her, the older woman who had questioned Vanessa about the hardship provision. Silver hair, kind eyes. "You do not need to apologize, Mrs. Hayes." "Please call me Margaret, and I do need to apologize. I let Vanessa convince me you were the enemy. I should have asked more questions. Should have looked at your actual proposal instead of just listening to her version of it." I walked to the living room and sat down in my father's old recliner. "Thank you for saying that. I am 68 years old, Mrs. Abbott. My husband died 5 years ago. I live on Social Security. $1,600 a month. When Vanessa said you were demanding $1,200 a year, I panicked. But then I actually read your hardship provision. $600 a year, that is $50 a month, less than my cable bill." I tried to make it fair. "You did more than that. You could have charged everyone the full rate. You did not have to offer a discount to people like me." She paused. "I wanted you to know that not everyone in Glacier Ridge hates you. Some of us understand what you are doing, and some of us are grateful you are being reasonable about it." After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, one voice of support in a sea of hostility. It should not have mattered so much, but it did. The next day, I drove into Whitefish to buy winter supplies. Salt for the driveway, a snow shovel, chains for my tires, things I had not needed in Denver. At the hardware store, Caleb Torres was behind the counter again. He smiled when he saw me. "Mrs. Abbott, settling in okay?" "Trying to. This is my first Montana winter in 30 years. I had forgotten how much snow you get." "This is nothing. Wait until January." He rang up my purchases. "I heard about the court hearing. Sounds like it went your way." Word travels fast. "Small county, and people talk." He lowered his voice. "For what it is worth, I think you handled it right, standing your ground. Your father would have done the same." "I am not sure everyone agrees with you." "The ones who matter do." He handed me my receipt. "Listen, I know you are out there alone now that your son went back to Colorado. If you need anything, help with the snow, maintenance on the house, anything, you call me. I mean it." There was something in his voice. Not pity exactly, more like recognition. Like he understood what it meant to be alone in a house too big for one person. "Thank you," I said. "I appreciate that." On the drive back to the ranch, I thought about Caleb, about the way he had talked about my father at the funeral, about the quiet competence in his voice. I realized I knew almost nothing about him except that he was a widower and had worked for my father. Back at the ranch, I opened my laptop and did what any reasonable person in the 21st century would do. I Googled him. Caleb Torres, 58 years old, owned a small contracting business in Whitefish. His wife Lisa had died 3 years ago, breast cancer. They had been married 35 years, no children. There was a photo from her obituary. Caleb and Lisa at their wedding, young and impossibly happy. Another photo of them on a hiking trail somewhere in Glacier National Park. She had been beautiful, dark hair and a bright smile. I closed the laptop, feeling like I had intruded on something private. That night, the temperature dropped to 5 degrees. I woke at 2 in the morning to a sound I did not recognize at first. A sharp crack, then rushing water. I ran downstairs. Water was pouring from under the kitchen sink. A pipe had frozen and burst. I fumbled for the main water shutoff valve in the basement. Got it turned off. Stood there in the freezing darkness with water soaking through my socks and tried not to cry. At 6 in the morning, I called Caleb. I am so sorry to bother you this early, but I have a burst pipe, and I do not know what to do. He was at my door 40 minutes later with a toolbox and a space heater. Let me see the damage, he said. I showed him. The kitchen was a mess, standing water, the cabinet under the sink destroyed. He got to work without being asked, cut out the damaged section of pipe, installed a new piece, showed me how to wrap the exposed pipes with insulation so it would not happen again. We worked together for 3 hours, me holding things, handing him tools, learning as I went. By the time we finished, the sun was up and the kitchen was functional again. How much do I owe you? I asked. Nothing. Consider it a welcome to Montana. Caleb, you just spent 3 hours fixing my house. I need to pay you. Then pay me in coffee. I have been up since 5 and I am freezing. I made coffee. We sat at the kitchen table while the space heater hummed in the corner. Thank you, I said. Really, I would have been lost without you. You would have figured it out, but it is easier with help. He wrapped his hands around the mug. You doing okay out here? It is a big change from Denver. It is terrifying, I said honestly. I spent my whole life in cities, suburbs, places where if something broke, you called someone. Now I am that someone and I have no idea what I am doing. You will learn. Your father did not grow up on a ranch either. He learned as he went. Did he talk about me when you worked for him? Caleb nodded slowly. He was not a chatty man, but yeah, he talked about you. Said he drove you away by being stubborn. Said he regretted it every day. He never told me that. He did not know how. Some men that generation, they do not have the words for feelings, so they leave you land instead. He smiled a little. Seemed like that was his way of saying sorry. After Caleb left, I walked through the house looking at it with new eyes. Every board, every nail, every stone in the fireplace. My father had built this. Not all of it, not originally, but he had maintained it, improved it, kept it standing for 60 years. This was his apology. This house, this land, this road that was now paying me $8,000 a month. I opened his journals again, started reading entries from the years after I left. October 1995. Claire had a baby, a girl, Sophie Marie. Mary called me crying she was so happy. Said Claire looks tired but happy. I wanted to call, congratulate her. But I do not know how to start that conversation. What do I say? I am sorry I was a terrible father. Too late for that now. June 2000. Claire had a boy this time, Benjamin. Mary says he looks like me. I wonder if that bothers Claire. Having a son who looks like the father she does not speak to. I sent a card, did not sign it, just put some money in it. Money is easier than words. September 2005. Mary is dying. The cancer is everywhere. Claire came for the funeral, stood across the cemetery from me. She has gotten older, beautiful still, but older, tired. I wanted to go to her, tell her I love her, that I am proud of her, that I was wrong about Richard. He seems like a good man, a good father, but I could not make my feet move. Pride is a prison. I put the journal down and walked outside. The snow had stopped. The sky was that impossible blue you only get after a storm. I walked down Cottonwood Trail, my boots crunching in fresh snow. Cars passed me, residents of Glacier Ridge going about their lives. Some of them glared. Some looked away quickly. One woman, maybe 40, rolled down her window. "You should be ashamed of yourself," she said. "I am just walking on my own property," I replied. "You are destroying this community. People cannot afford what you are demanding. People who cannot afford it are paying half. That is not the point. The point is you are exploiting us. The point is I own this road and you need to use it. That is called business, not exploitation." She drove away fast enough to spray snow on my boots. I stood there breathing hard, adrenaline making my hands shake. I had never been confrontational in my life, had spent 56 years avoiding conflict, making peace, smoothing things over. But something had shifted. Maybe it was grief. Maybe it was rage at all the years I had spent accommodating everyone else. Maybe it was just exhaustion. Whatever it was, I was done apologizing for taking up space. A week later, I received a certified letter from the law office of Brendan Cross, attorney at law. Notice of legal action. The Glacier Ridge Estates Homeowners Association was suing me, claiming I was violating their rights, demanding the court establish a permanent free easement based on decades of use. I called Jordan Harper. "I got the lawsuit," I said. "I know, I got served this morning." She sounded tired. "They are throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. Prescriptive easement, implied easement, equitable easement, adverse possession. None of it will work, but it will take time to fight." "How much time?" 6 months minimum, maybe a year. And Claire, I need to be honest with you. This is going to cost money, legal fees, expert witnesses, court costs. We are looking at maybe $50,000 to see this through. $50,000. I had $8,000 coming in monthly, but I also had $180,000 in medical debt. "Can I afford this?" I asked. "That is not a legal question. That is a personal one. But Claire, if you back down now, you lose everything. They will get free access forever. You will have no leverage, no income from the easement. You will have to sell the ranch." I thought about that, selling the ranch, going back to Denver. To what? An empty house full of Richard's ghost, a job market that did not want women my age. "I will find the money," I said. After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table and did math. $8,000 a month in easement income, minus $2,000 for debt payments, minus $3,000 for living expenses. That left $3,000 a month, $36,000 a year in savings if I was careful. I could afford Jordan's fees, barely, if nothing else went wrong. I should have known better than to tempt fate. 3 days before Christmas, Sophie called. "Mom, I need to tell you something." Her voice was strange, tight. "What is wrong?" "I am filing a legal petition to challenge Dad's estate, well, Grandpa's estate, the ranch." The world tilted. "What?" "Mom, listen. I have been talking to an estate attorney here in Boston. Montana law says that when a parent dies and leaves everything to one child while excluding others, the will can be challenged, especially if the parent was elderly or possibly not of sound mind." "Sophie, your grandfather was completely sound. He had medical records showing no dementia, no cognitive decline." "He was 82. He had not spoken to you in 15 years. Then suddenly he leaves you everything. It looks suspicious. He left it to me because he wanted to make amends. That is your interpretation. My interpretation is that he was old and possibly influenced or confused. Mom, I am not trying to hurt you. I am trying to help. If I win, I get 50% of the estate. I sell my half. You sell your half. We split the money. You pay off your debt. You come back to Denver. This whole nightmare ends. Sophie, no. Mom, be reasonable. You are 56 years old with no job and massive debt. You are living in Montana in the middle of winter, fighting a legal battle with an entire neighborhood. This is not sustainable. I am making it sustainable. With what? Easement fees that might disappear if you lose the lawsuit. Mom, I love you, but you are not thinking clearly. You are grieving Dad. You are grieving Grandpa. You are making decisions based on emotion instead of logic. Maybe emotion is what I need right now. Maybe I spent too many years being logical and practical and doing what everyone else thought was best. So you're going to throw away your future out of spite. I am going to build a future out of what I have. And what I have is this ranch. Your grandfather gave it to me, not to be divided, not to be sold, to be kept. And I am keeping it. Sophie was quiet for a long moment. Mom, I already filed the petition. My lawyer is filing it with the Montana probate court tomorrow. I am sorry, but I am doing this. She hung up. I sat there with the phone in my hand and felt something crack inside my chest. My daughter was suing me. I called Ben. Did you know about this? I asked. Sophie told me last week. I tried to talk her out of it. Apparently you failed. Mom, she thinks she is helping you. She thinks you are self-destructing and she can save you by forcing you to sell. I am not self-destructing. I am rebuilding. I know that, but Sophie sees what she wants to see. She always has. He paused. Do you need me to come back out there? No, stay with your girlfriend. I will handle this. But after we hung up, I was not sure I could handle it. The HOA was suing me. My own daughter was suing me. I was alone in a house in Montana in the middle of winter with 2 legal battles I could not afford to lose. I did the only thing I could think of. I opened my father's journals and kept reading. March 2010. I saw Claire today at the grocery store in Kalispell. She did not see me. She was with her kids, teenagers now, beautiful children. Claire looked tired. Her husband was with her. Richard. He had his arm around her, protective. I wanted to go over, introduce myself to my grandchildren, but I did not. I am a coward. May 2015. I am getting old, 72 today. Mary has been gone 10 years. Claire has not spoken to me in 21 years. I made terrible mistakes, but I cannot undo them. All I can do is leave her something when I go. The ranch, the land. Maybe she will understand then that I loved her, even when I could not say it. January 2023. My heart is failing. The doctor says I should get my affairs in order. I met with the lawyer today, updated my will. Everything goes to Claire. The ranch, the savings, everything. I wrote her a letter trying to explain about the road, about the easement income she can generate if she is smart and strong enough to fight for it. I hope she is. I hope she finds the strength I never had to stand up for herself. I love you, Claire Bear, always did. Your stubborn old father. I closed the journal and cried until there were no tears left. Then I got up, washed my face, and called Jordan Harper. I have another lawsuit, I said. My daughter is challenging the will. Jordan swore, professionally but definitively. On what grounds? She thinks my father was not of sound mind, that the will is invalid. We have medical records proving otherwise. We have the lawyer who drafted the will who can testify your father was lucid and intentional. But Claire, this is going to cost more money. A lot more. How much? Another 30,000 minimum, and it complicates the easement case. If Sophie wins and forces a sale of the property, the whole easement agreement becomes moot. I looked around the kitchen, at the table where my mother had taught me to knead bread, at the window where I had watched my father come in from the fields every evening, at the walls that held 60 years of family history. I am not losing this house, I said, whatever it takes. Christmas came and went. I spent it alone. Ben invited me to Colorado. Sophie, in a moment of guilt, invited me to Boston. I declined both. Instead, I sat in my father's recliner and watched the snow fall and tried to remember the last Christmas I had felt happy. It had been years ago, before Richard got sick, when the kids were still young enough to believe in magic. Now there was no magic, just legal bills and loneliness and the constant low-grade fear that I was making a terrible mistake. On New Year's Eve, I got a text from Caleb. You should not be alone tonight. I am having a few people over. Nothing fancy. Just dinner and maybe some cards. Come if you want. I almost said no, but the house was too quiet and my thoughts were too loud. I drove to his place just after 6. A small house on the edge of Whitefish, warm light in the windows, trucks in the driveway. Caleb answered the door with a smile. You came. I was not sure you would. Inside, there were maybe 8 people, all around my age or older. Caleb introduced me. Tom, who had worked with my father, his wife Anna, 2 other couples whose names I immediately forgot, and Margaret Hayes, the woman from Glacier Ridge who had called to apologize. Margaret, I said, surprised. I did not know you knew Caleb. Small county, she said with a smile. We all know each other eventually. Dinner was simple: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, the kind of food that tastes like comfort. We sat around Caleb's table and talked about nothing important. The weather, the upcoming ski season, a new restaurant opening in town. No one mentioned the lawsuits. No one mentioned the easement fight. It was like stepping into a neutral zone where I could just be Claire instead of the woman suing an entire neighborhood. After dinner, we played cards. I had not played cards in years, did not remember the rules of euchre. They taught me patiently, laughing when I made mistakes. At midnight, we counted down and raised glasses of cheap champagne. To new beginnings, Caleb said, looking at me. To new beginnings, I echoed. When I left that night, Caleb walked me to my car. Thank you for coming, he said. I know things are hard right now, but you have friends here. You are not alone. I looked at him in the porch light. This man who had shown up to fix my burst pipe, who had invited me into his home, who looked at me like I was a person instead of a problem. Why are you being so kind to me? I asked. Because you are trying to do something hard. Stand on your own. Build a life. I know what that is like. After Lisa died, I had to learn how to live again, how to be a person instead of half of a couple. It is terrifying, but you do it anyway. Does it get easier? Some days it is still hard, but you learn to live with the hard parts. He smiled. And you find people who make it a little easier. I hope I can be one of those people for you. There was something in his voice, an invitation, not to romance exactly. We were both too broken for that, but to companionship, to friendship, to not being alone. I would like that, I said. I drove home through the snow, feeling lighter than I had in months. In January, the legal battles intensified. Jordan filed responses to both lawsuits. The HOA pushed for an expedited trial. Sophie's lawyer demanded depositions. I spent hours being questioned by lawyers who did not believe I deserved the ranch, who thought I was greedy or crazy or both. Sophie's lawyer was particularly aggressive. Mrs. Abbott, Is not it true that you had no relationship with your father for 15 years? Yes. And is not it true that he never once called you or visited you during that time? That is correct. So you had no way of knowing his mental state. I had medical records. Medical records from his general practitioner, not a psychiatric evaluation. He was lucid. The lawyer who drafted his will can testify to that. Or perhaps the lawyer was simply doing what your father asked, without questioning whether your father was capable of making sound decisions. It went on for hours. By the time it ended, I was exhausted. Jordan drove me back to the ranch. You did well, she said. You stayed calm, did not get defensive. It felt awful. It was supposed to. They are trying to rattle you, make you seem emotional or unstable, but you held it together. When will we know? The judge will rule on Sophie's petition in about 6 weeks. The easement case will go to trial in 4 months. It is all happening at once. What if I lose both? Jordan looked at me seriously. If you lose the probate case, Sophie forces a sale. If you lose the easement case, you lose your income. Either way, you lose the ranch. So I have to win both. You have to win both. That night I could not sleep. I lay in my father's bed and stared at the ceiling and thought about losing everything. The house, the land, the income, the fragile new life I was trying to build. At 3 in the morning, I got up and went to the kitchen, made tea, sat at the table in the dark. I thought about Richard, about the last conversation we had before he died. He had been in hospice, heavily medicated, drifting in and out. But he had grabbed my hand and pulled me close. Claire, he had whispered, I need you to promise me something. Anything. After I am gone, I need you to live, really live, not just exist, not just take care of everyone else. Live for you. Richard, I do not know how to do that. You will figure it out. You are stronger than you think. Promise me. I promise. He had died 2 days later. Sitting in my father's kitchen at 3 in the morning, I realized I was trying to keep that promise. This ranch, this fight, this terrifying new life. This was me trying to live instead of just exist. I was not going to give up. The next morning, I called Sophie. We need to talk, I said. I agree. We met for lunch in Kalispell, neutral ground, a small cafe where neither of us knew anyone. Sophie looked tired, dark circles under her eyes, guilt written all over her face. Mom, I am sorry, she said before I could speak. I know you think I am betraying you, but I am trying to save you from making a huge mistake. Sophie, I get to make my own mistakes now. But this is not just a mistake. This is your future, your security. My security is not your responsibility. It is mine. Mom, you're going broke fighting these lawsuits. You could lose everything. I could, but I could also win. And if I win, I have income for life. I have a home. I have purpose. Or you could sell now, take the money, and retire comfortably. Comfortably where? Doing what? Sophie, I spent 30 years being Richard's wife. Your mother, my father's estranged daughter. I do not know who I am when I am not taking care of someone else. This ranch is the first thing that is just mine. I need it. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. I do not want you to lose it all. I know, but you need to trust me to handle my own life, even if I fail. She wiped her eyes. What if I drop the petition, let you keep the ranch? I want you to drop it because you believe in me, not because you pity me. I do not pity you, Mom. I am terrified for you. There is a difference. We sat there in silence for a long time. Finally, Sophie said, What do you need from me? I need you to let me do this. Let me fight these battles. Let me build this life. And if I fail, let me fail on my own terms." She nodded slowly. "Okay, I will drop the petition. But Mom, if this goes badly, if you need help, you call me. Promise." "I promise." 2 weeks later, Sophie's lawyer filed a motion to withdraw the petition. The probate case was dismissed. One battle down, one to go. The easement trial was set for late March. Jordan and I spent weeks preparing, gathering evidence, interviewing witnesses, building our case. The strategy was simple: prove I own the road, prove no legal easement existed, prove I had the right to charge for access. But the HOA had their own strategy. Paint me as a greedy outsider taking advantage of a community that had relied on my father's generosity for decades. Brendan Cross, their lawyer, was good. He found elderly residents on fixed incomes who could testify about hardship. He found families with sick children who needed reliable access for ambulances. He found longtime residents who remembered my father as a kind neighbor who would never have charged them. He was going to make me look like a monster. The night before the trial, I sat on my porch and watched the sun set behind the mountains. The snow was melting. Spring was coming. Everything was about to change. Caleb pulled up in his truck. "Thought you might want some company," he said. We sat together on the porch steps, not talking, just being. Finally, he said, "You nervous about tomorrow?" "Terrified." "You are going to do fine. You have the law on your side." "The law does not always win. Sometimes sympathy wins, and I am not the sympathetic one here." "You are tougher than you think, Claire." I looked at him. This man who had become my friend over the past months, who had fixed my pipes and invited me to dinner and shown up when I needed someone to just sit with me in silence. "Thank you," I said, "for everything." "You do not have to thank me." "Yes, I do. You have been kind to me when almost no one else has. That matters." He reached over and took my hand, just held it. His palm was rough from work, warm. We sat like that until the stars came out. The trial started on a cold morning in late March. The courtroom was packed. It felt like the entire population of Glacier Ridge Estates had shown up. I sat next to Jordan at the plaintiff's table, tried to keep my breathing steady. The judge was the same woman from the preliminary hearing, Judge Sarah Martinez. She looked at the crowd with a frown. "This is a civil trial, not a circus," she said. "I will have order or I will clear the room. Understood?" Everyone nodded. Brendan Cross presented first. He called witnesses, residents who had lived in Glacier Ridge for 30 years, who had children who had grown up using that road, who had medical emergencies that required ambulance access. He made it sound like I was cutting off a community from civilization. Then Jordan stood up. She presented the deed, the property survey, my father's letters explicitly stating the access was permissive and revocable. She called expert witnesses who testified about fair market value for easements, about property rights, about the law. She called me to the stand. "Mrs. Abbott, why are you charging for access to this road?" I looked at the crowd, at Vanessa Sterling sitting in the front row with her arms crossed, at Margaret Hayes, who gave me an encouraging smile, at Caleb in the back. "Because I need to survive," I said. "My husband died of cancer and left me with $180,000 in medical debt. I have no job, no retirement. This ranch is all I have. My father left it to me so I would have security. The road is part of that security." "Are you trying to punish the residents of Glacier Ridge?" "No, I am trying to charge fair market value for something they need that I own. That is business, not punishment." You have a hardship provision for elderly residents on fixed incomes. Yes, they pay half, $600 a year instead of $1,200. Why? Because I am not heartless. I understand some people genuinely cannot afford the full amount, but I also cannot give it away for free. I need to live too. Jordan sat down. Brendan Cross stood up for cross-examination. Mrs. Abbott, is not it true that you have no experience managing property? That is correct. No experience running a business. I was a teacher, then a mother, then a caregiver. No, I do not have business experience. So you are learning as you go. Yes. Is not it possible you are charging too much, because you do not know what fair market value actually is? I hired an attorney who specializes in property law. She researched comparable situations. This is fair market value. Or it is what your lawyer told you to charge to maximize her fees. Jordan objected. The judge sustained it. But the damage was done. Brendan had planted doubt. The trial lasted 3 days. Witnesses, evidence, arguments. On the final day, both lawyers gave closing statements. Brendan Cross painted a picture of a desperate community being exploited by a desperate woman. Jordan Harper painted a picture of property rights and the rule of law. The judge listened to everything, took notes, asked questions. Finally, she said, I will take this under advisement. I will issue a ruling within 30 days. 30 days. A month of waiting to find out if I would keep my home or lose everything. I walked out of that courtroom, not knowing if I had won or lost. Jordan put her hand on my shoulder. You did everything right. Now we wait. I drove back to the ranch alone. Caleb had offered to come with me, but I needed to be by myself. The house was quiet when I got home. I stood in the kitchen and looked around at the life I was trying to build. And I realized something. Win or lose, I had already changed. 3 months ago, I had been a widow too scared to make a decision, too worried about what everyone else thought, too afraid of conflict. Now I was a woman who had fought for what was hers, who had stood up in court and defended her choices, who had learned to live alone and fix burst pipes and navigate Montana winters. Win or lose, I was not the same person anymore. I opened my father's journal to the last entry. February 2024, 1 month before he died. I am ready to go, tired, sick, ready to see Mary again, but I worry about Claire. I hope she gets the ranch. I hope she understands what I am trying to give her. Not just land, not just money, but a chance to stand on her own 2 feet, to be strong, to be free. I love you, Claire Bear, be brave, your father. I closed the journal and whispered to the empty kitchen. I am being brave, Dad. I am trying. The 30 days of waiting felt like 30 years. I woke each morning to silence and uncertainty, made coffee, stared at my phone, willing it to ring with news from Jordan. It never did. The law moves at its own pace, indifferent to the anxiety of those waiting for judgment. Spring came slowly to Montana. The snow melted in patches, revealing brown grass and mud. The creek that ran through the eastern edge of the property swelled with runoff. Ice broke apart on the pond where my father used to fish. Everything was transforming, thawing, coming back to life. I felt like I was doing the same thing, thawing after years of being frozen in a life that no longer fit. On the 15th day of waiting, Vanessa Sterling showed up at my door. I saw her car coming up the driveway and considered not answering, but curiosity won out. I opened the door before she could knock. She looked different, older somehow, tired. The perfect blonde bob was still there, but the fire in her eyes had dimmed. Mrs. Abbott, she said, may I come in? I hesitated. This woman had led the charge against me, had painted me as the enemy to 68 households, had made my life hell for months. But something in her face made me step aside. Coffee, I asked. Please. We sat at my kitchen table like two strangers forced together by circumstance, which I supposed we were. Vanessa wrapped her hands around the mug and stared into it like she was reading tea leaves. I owe you an apology, she said finally. A real one, not the kind you make because someone tells you to, the kind you make because you have looked at yourself and realized you were wrong. I waited. I made you the villain, she continued. I needed someone to blame for everything falling apart. My divorce, my debt, the fact that my life did not turn out the way I planned, and you showed up at the perfect time. A stranger demanding money from a community I was supposed to protect. It was easy to make you the enemy. You did more than make me the enemy. You organized harassment. Someone slashed my tires. Someone set fire to my barn. She looked up, eyes wide. I did not know about the fire, I swear. The tires, yes, I knew some of the younger residents were angry. I should have stopped them. But the fire, that was not me. Does it matter? You created the environment where people thought it was okay to attack me. You are right, it does not matter. I am responsible either way. She took a shaky breath. My son Kyle, he is 19. He set the fire. He thought he was protecting me, protecting the community. The sheriff figured it out last week. Kyle confessed. My stomach dropped. Is he being charged? That depends on you. The sheriff said you could press charges for arson. Kyle would go to prison, or you could choose not to. Let him do community service instead. I thought about my own children, about the things they had done to protect me even when I did not need protecting, about being 19 and stupid and thinking you were helping. What do you want me to do? I asked. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. I want you to show my son the mercy I did not show you, but I have no right to ask for that. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the mountains were turning green, life returning after a long winter. Community service, I said without turning around. 100 hours, here on the ranch, helping me with maintenance and repairs, and counseling. He needs to understand why what he did was wrong. Thank you, Vanessa whispered. Thank you. I am not doing it for you. I am doing it because he is 19 and deserves a second chance. But Vanessa, if anything like this happens again, I will not be merciful a second time. It won't, I promise. After she left, I called Jordan to tell her about Kyle. You are sure you want to do this? She asked. Arson is serious. He could have killed you. I know, but sending a 19-year-old kid to prison does not help anyone. Maybe this way he learns something. You are a better person than I would be in your situation. I was not sure about that, but I was trying to be someone my father would be proud of, someone who understood that mercy was not weakness. The judge's ruling came on day 27. Jordan called me at 8 in the morning. I was feeding the chickens I had bought the week before. 6 hens who laid eggs and made me feel like I was actually living on a ranch instead of just existing in a house. Claire, the ruling is in. Can you come to my office? My heart stopped. Just tell me I cannot wait. You won, on all counts. The judge ruled that no legal easement exists, that you have the right to charge fair market value for access, that the HOA must enter into a formal easement agreement and pay the fees. I sat down hard on the porch steps. The phone almost slipped from my hand. Say that again. You won, Claire. The ranch is yours. The income is yours. It is over. I started crying. Big ugly sobs that scared the chickens. Claire, are you okay? I am fine. I am good. I am better than good. Jordan, thank you. Thank you for believing in me. You believed in yourself. That is what won this. After we hung up, I sat on those steps for an hour, just breathing, feeling the sun on my face, listening to the chickens cluck and the creek rush and the wind move through the pines. I had won. The ranch was mine. The income was mine. My future was mine. For the first time in 56 years, I was completely, terrifyingly, wonderfully free. I called Sophie first. Mom, is everything okay? I won. The judge ruled in my favor. The easement agreement stands. There was a pause. Then Sophie started laughing. Mom, that is incredible. I am so proud of you. Really? Really? You fought for what was yours and you won. That takes guts. I am sorry I had to fight you too. I am sorry I made you. I thought I was protecting you. But you did not need protecting. You needed support. We talked for another 20 minutes. About the ruling. About what came next. About Sophie's wedding, which was coming up in June. Will you come? She asked. I know things have been hard between us, but I want you there. Of course I will come. You are my daughter. I would not miss it. After Sophie, I called Ben, then Caleb. Caleb answered on the first ring. Claire, what is wrong? Nothing. Everything is right. The judge ruled in my favor. That is fantastic. We need to celebrate. I am taking you to dinner tonight. No arguments. Caleb, you do not have to do that. I want to. Let me do something nice for you. You deserve it. That evening, he picked me up in his truck. We drove to a small restaurant in Whitefish. Nothing fancy. Just good food and a quiet corner booth where we could talk without being overheard. Over steak and wine, he asked me what I was going to do now. I do not know, I admitted. Keep the ranch, pay off my debt, figure out what comes next. You could do anything. You have income, security, freedom. That is the terrifying part. I have never had freedom before. I went from my parents' house to marriage to motherhood to caregiving. I have never just been Claire. So who is Claire? I thought about that. I am still figuring it out, but I think she is someone who fixes her own pipes and fights her own battles and is not afraid to stand alone. Caleb smiled. That is a good start. On the drive home, he was quiet. When we pulled up to my house, he turned to me. Claire, I need to tell you something, and you do not have to respond. I just need to say it. My heart started beating faster. I like spending time with you. These past few months, getting to know you, watching you fight for this place. You are the strongest person I have met in a long time, and I know we are both still grieving. I know neither of us is looking for anything complicated, but I wanted you to know that if you ever want more than friendship, I am here. I looked at this man who had shown up to fix my burst pipe in the freezing cold, who had invited me into his home when I was alone on New Year's Eve, who had sat with me in silence when words were too hard. Caleb, I am 56 years old. I have no idea what I am doing with my life. I am barely figuring out how to be alone, much less how to be with someone. I know, that is okay. I am not asking for anything you are not ready to give. I just wanted you to know the option is there. Whenever you are ready, if you are ever ready. He kissed my cheek, just a brief touch. Then he waited while I went inside. I stood at the window and watched him drive away, my hand on my cheek where his lips had been. I was not ready, but maybe someday I would be. The formal easement agreement was signed 2 weeks later. At the county courthouse, me and Jordan on one side of the table, the entire Glacier Ridge HOA board on the other. The new president was Tom Chen, the accountant who had tried to be reasonable from the start. Vanessa had resigned after the Kyle incident. Tom extended his hand. Mrs. Abbott, I want to start fresh. The last few months have been difficult for everyone. I hope we can move forward as neighbors instead of adversaries. I shook his hand. I would like that. We signed the papers. 20-year agreement. Renewable. $96,600 per year. Payable in monthly installments. Hardship provisions for elderly and low-income residents intact. It was done. Walking out of that courthouse, I felt like I had climbed a mountain. Exhausted but exhilarated. Battered but standing. Jordan hugged me goodbye. You did it, Claire. You should be proud. I could not have done it without you. You could have, but I am glad you did not have to. That night, I opened a bottle of wine I had been saving, sat on the porch and watched the sunset turn the mountains purple and gold. My phone buzzed, a text from Margaret Hayes. Some of us from Glacier Ridge want to do something nice for you, to apologize for how we treated you. Would you let us host a welcome dinner? A real one this time. I stared at that message for a long time. Part of me wanted to say no, to keep my distance, to protect myself from more hurt. But another part of me, the part that was learning to be brave, said yes. The dinner was at the community clubhouse, the same place where they had held angry meetings about me, where they had voted to fight me in court. But tonight, it was decorated with flowers and candles. 20 people were there, not the whole community, just the ones who wanted to make peace. Margaret greeted me at the door with a hug. Thank you for coming. I know this cannot be easy. It is not, but I am trying to move forward. Tom Chen stood up when I entered. Mrs. Abbott, thank you for being here. We wanted to do this to show you that not everyone in Glacier Ridge was against you. Some of us understood. Some of us were grateful. And all of us are sorry for how ugly things got. They had made a potluck dinner, casseroles and salads and homemade bread. We sat at long tables and ate and talked about the weather, about gardening, about plans for summer. No one mentioned the lawsuits. No one mentioned the easement fees. It was like we had all agreed to start over, to pretend the war had never happened. Except it had, and we all knew it. But maybe that was okay. Maybe moving forward meant acknowledging the past without being trapped by it. After dinner, an elderly man approached me. I recognized him from the trial. He had testified about needing reliable access for his wife's medical appointments. Mrs. Abbott, I wanted to apologize. I said some harsh things about you during the trial. I was scared. My wife has Parkinson's. The idea of not being able to get her to the doctor terrified me. I understand, I said. I never wanted to cut anyone off. I just needed to survive. I know that now, and I want you to know that I qualify for the hardship rate. $600 a year, $50 a month. That is manageable. You were more than fair. After he walked away, Margaret came over. You are changing minds, Claire, slowly, but it is happening. I never wanted to be their enemy. You were never their enemy. You were just the mirror that showed them their own fears. I went home that night feeling something I had not felt in months. Not quite belonging, but the possibility of it. Spring turned into summer. The ranch came alive. Wildflowers bloomed in the meadows. The garden I had planted started producing tomatoes and zucchini. The chickens laid eggs every morning. Kyle Sterling started his community service. He showed up every Saturday morning for 4 hours. Sullen at first, resentful. I put him to work, painting the barn that he had tried to burn down, repairing fences, hauling brush, hard physical labor that left him exhausted. We did not talk much at first. I gave him instructions and he followed them, silent and angry. But after a few weeks, he started asking questions. Why did you press charges against my mom, but not me? I did not press charges against your mother. She broke the law, but I chose not to pursue it, just like I chose not to send you to prison. Mercy does not mean what you did was okay. It means I believe you can be better. My mom says you are a good person, that she was wrong about you. Your mom was scared. People do terrible things when they are scared. Were you scared during all this? Terrified every single day. But you did it anyway. Yes, because being scared is not a good reason to give up. By week 8, Kyle was talking more, telling me about his plans to go to community college, about wanting to study forestry, about his girlfriend who wanted him to move to Missoula with her. What do you want? I asked. I do not know. I am 19. I do not know anything. That is okay. 19 is supposed to be confusing. But Kyle, you are smart and you work hard. Do not let one mistake define the rest of your life. On his last day, he handed me an envelope. What is this? A letter. You do not have to read it now, but I wanted you to have it. After he left, I opened it. Mrs. Abbott, I am sorry for what I did. I was stupid and angry and I thought I was protecting my mom. But I almost killed you. I almost burned down your home. I will regret that for the rest of my life. Thank you for giving me a second chance. I will not waste it. Kyle. I folded the letter carefully and put it in the drawer where I kept my father's journals. Someday, I would look back on this and remember that forgiveness was possible, even when it was hard. Sophie's wedding was in Boston in late June. I flew out with a dress I had bought in Whitefish and a heart full of complicated emotions. My little girl was getting married, and I had almost missed it because of my own stubbornness. The wedding was beautiful. Sophie was radiant in white lace. Her fiancé, Jake, looked at her like she was the only person in the world. I cried through the entire ceremony. At the reception, Sophie pulled me aside. Mom, I am so glad you are here. I would not have missed this for anything. I know we had a rough few months, but I want you to know that I see you now, really see you. You are not just my mom, you are Claire, and Claire is pretty amazing. We hugged and I cried again, happy tears this time. Ben was there too with his girlfriend Mara. Mom, you look good, different, stronger. I feel different. I feel like I am finally becoming who I was supposed to be all along. Flying back to Montana, I looked out the window at the country passing below. Cities and farmland and mountains, so much space, so many possibilities. My birthday had passed quietly in May. No party, no celebration, just me and Caleb having dinner at his place. 57 felt different than 56, like I had crossed some invisible threshold, like I had earned my way into this new version of myself. Back at the ranch, I found a letter waiting, from the Montana Land Trust. We would like to discuss the possibility of a conservation easement on your property. This would protect the land from future development while providing you with significant tax benefits. Please call us to discuss. I called them the next day. The director, David Walsh, came out to walk the property with me. He was 50-ish with sun-weathered skin and the easy manner of someone who spent most of his time outdoors. Your property is special, he said as we hiked through the pine forest. Old-growth trees, elk migration corridor, clean water. This is exactly the kind of land we want to protect. What would a conservation easement mean? It means you donate the development rights to the land trust. You still own the property. You can still live here, ranch here, pass it down to your children. But the land can never be subdivided or developed. It stays wild forever. What do I get out of it? A significant tax deduction. based on the appraised value of the development rights, probably around $350,000. And the satisfaction of knowing this land will be protected long after you are gone. I thought about my father, about how he had refused to sell pieces of this land even when he needed money, about how he had protected it for me. "Let me think about it," I said. That night, I called Ben. "What do you think? Should I do it?" "Mom, what do you want? Not what you think Grandpa would want. Not what Sophie or I want. What do you want?" "I want this place to stay wild. I want it to be here for your children, for their children. I want it to matter." "Then do it." I called David Walsh the next day. "Let's move forward with the conservation easement." The process took 3 months, surveys and appraisals and legal documents. But in September, I signed the papers. 160 acres protected forever. Tax deduction of $350,000 that would offset my easement income for years. And the knowledge that my father's land would never be developed, never subdivided, never turned into another Glacier Ridge estates. It would stay wild, stay whole, stay home. That fall, I started something new. A program for women over 50 who were starting over after divorce or widowhood. I partnered with the community college in Kalispell, offered workshops on financial planning, property management, self-advocacy, all the things I had to learn the hard way. The first workshop had 12 women, all of them scared, all of them alone, all of them trying to figure out what came next. I told them my story, about Richard's death, about inheriting the ranch, about fighting the lawsuits, about learning to stand on my own. "I am not special," I said. "I am just a woman who decided that 56 was not too old to start over, that being scared was not a good reason to give up, that I deserved to take up space in the world." A woman in the back row raised her hand. She was maybe 60, silver hair, tired eyes. "How did you get over being afraid?" "I did not. I am still afraid, every day, but I do it anyway. Fear does not go away, you just get better at living with it." After the workshop, several women came up to thank me, to tell me their stories, to ask for advice. I gave them what I could, but mostly I just listened, because sometimes that is all anyone needs, someone to bear witness to their struggle. Driving home that night, I thought about my father's journal, about his words. "I hope she finds what I found here. Peace, purpose, a place to belong." I had found it, all of it. The ranch was not just land anymore. It was not just income. It was purpose. It was peace. It was the place where I finally learned to belong to myself. Caleb and I had dinner once a week, sometimes at his place, sometimes at mine. We talked about everything and nothing, our dead spouses, our grown children, our fears about getting older. One night in October, as we sat on my porch watching the first snow of the season fall, he took my hand. "Claire, I know you are not ready, and that is okay, but I need you to know that I am falling in love with you, have been for months, and I am willing to wait as long as it takes." I looked at him, this good, patient man who had seen me at my worst and stayed anyway. "Caleb, I am terrified of losing someone again. Richard's death almost destroyed me. I do not know if I can survive that kind of loss twice." No one knows if they can survive loss until they have to. But Claire, we are both going to die someday. That is guaranteed. The only question is whether we waste the time we have being afraid of the inevitable. He was right, and I knew it. I am not ready to get married. I am not ready to move in together, but I am ready to try, to see where this goes. He smiled. That is all I am asking. He kissed me then, really kissed me, and it felt like coming home. The easement income kept arriving every month. $8,050 like clockwork. I paid off my medical debt in 18 months, started saving, started investing, started building a future that did not depend on anyone but me. By my 58th birthday, I had $120,000 in savings. The debt was gone. The ranch was thriving. I hired a part-time ranch hand to help with the heavy work. A young woman named Emma who wanted to learn ranching. I taught her everything I had learned: how to fix fences, how to maintain equipment, how to read the weather. She reminded me of myself at her age, hungry for knowledge, eager to prove herself, unaware of her own strength. "You are good at this," I told her one day as we repaired a section of fence. "I am just doing what you taught me." "No, you are doing more than that. You are becoming someone who can stand on her own. That is not something I can teach. That is something you have to learn for yourself." 1 year after the judge's ruling, the Glacier Ridge HOA threw a community barbecue, and they invited me. I almost did not go, but Caleb convinced me. "These are your neighbors. Whether you like it or not, might as well try to get along." The barbecue was at the community park. 100 people, families and couples and elderly residents. Some of them I recognized from the trial, some were new. Tom Chen greeted me warmly. "Claire, thank you for coming. We wanted to do this to show our appreciation. The easement agreement is working well. The road is better maintained than it has ever been. We realize now that what you asked for was fair." Margaret Hayes introduced me to her grandchildren. Kyle Sterling waved at me from across the park. Vanessa came over with her new husband. "Claire, I want you to meet David. We got married last month." I shook his hand. He seemed kind, quiet, nothing like the man who had built Glacier Ridge and then lost everything. "Congratulations," I said to Vanessa. "I am happy for you." "I am happy too. For the first time in years, I am actually happy. And part of that is because you showed me that it is possible to stand up for yourself without being cruel. You taught me that." After they walked away, Caleb put his arm around me. "You okay?" "Yeah, I am good. Better than good." That evening, as the sun set and families packed up their picnic blankets, I stood at the edge of the park and looked out at Glacier Ridge Estates. At the houses where people lived their lives. At the road that connected them to the world. My road, my property, my choice to share it. And I realized that power was not about crushing people. It was about deciding when to stand firm and when to show mercy, when to fight and when to make peace. I had learned that, finally. Better late than never. Driving home with Caleb, I felt something I had not felt in years, something I had almost forgotten existed. Contentment. Not happiness exactly. That was too simple, too fleeting. But contentment. The deep-bone knowledge that I was exactly where I was supposed to be, doing exactly what I was supposed to do, being exactly who I was always meant to become. The ranch lights were on when we pulled into the driveway. I had left them on by accident that morning, but now they looked like a welcome, like home. Caleb walked me to the door. "Do you want to come in?" I asked. "Are you sure?" "I am sure." We went inside, made tea, sat on the couch in front of the fire. And for the first time since Richard died, I let myself lean into someone, let myself be held, let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, love was possible again. Not the same love I had with Richard. That was gone, buried with him. But a different love, quieter, more careful, built on friendship and respect and the shared knowledge of what it meant to survive loss. "Tell me something," Caleb said softly. "Are you happy?" I thought about that word. Happy. It felt too big, too absolute. "I am becoming happy," I said finally. For the first time in my life, I am choosing my own path, making my own decisions, living for myself. That is not happiness yet, but it is heading in that direction. That is good enough for me. We sat there until the fire burned down to embers, until the clock struck midnight, until exhaustion finally pulled us towards sleep. Caleb kissed me goodnight at the door. I will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow, I agreed. After he left, I walked through the house turning off lights, checking locks, the same ritual I had done every night since moving here. But tonight it felt different. The house did not feel empty. It felt full, full of possibility, full of promise, full of the life I was building one day at a time. I went to my father's room, sat on the edge of the bed, pulled out his final journal entry. I love you, Claire Bear. Be brave, your father. I am being brave, Dad, I whispered to the empty room. I am being so brave. And somewhere in the darkness, in the space between worlds, I hoped he knew. I hoped he was proud. I hoped he understood that everything he had given me, the land and the road and the chance to start over, had saved my life. And I was finally, truly, completely alive. 3 years had passed since the judge's ruling, and the ranch had become something I barely recognized from those first terrified months. At 59, I woke each morning to a life I had built with my own hands. The easement income still arrived like clockwork. $8,050 on the first of every month. 3 years of payments meant nearly $300,000 received. The medical debt was long gone. My savings account had grown to $280,000. I had investments, a retirement plan, security I had never imagined possible. More than that, I had purpose. The ranch had expanded beyond just land and income. I ran 50 head of cattle now, partnering with Caleb, who managed the herd while I handled the business side. The chickens had multiplied to 20. I had planted an orchard. Apple trees and cherry trees that would not bear fruit for years, but would be there long after I was gone. The workshops for women starting over had grown too. What started as 12 nervous women in a community college classroom had become a monthly gathering of 40 or 50. Women of all ages, though most were my age or older, divorced, widowed, starting careers after decades as homemakers, learning to stand on their own. I taught them what I had learned, how to negotiate, how to advocate for themselves, how to turn fear into fuel. But the biggest change was Caleb. We had been together for 3 years, not married. We both carried too much history for that, but together in the way that mattered. He had his house in Whitefish. I had the ranch. We spent most nights together, alternating between locations like migratory birds following the seasons. It worked. This slow, careful love we had built on the foundation of loss and survival. I was feeding the horses on a cool October morning when my phone rang. Sophie. Mom, I have news. Something in her voice made my heart skip. What kind of news? The good kind. I am pregnant. You are going to be a grandmother. I sat down hard on a hay bale. Sophie, oh my God, that is wonderful. I am 12 weeks along. We wanted to wait until we were sure everything was okay before telling anyone. But Mom, I am terrified. I have no idea how to be a mother. I laughed. Sophie, no one knows how to be a mother until they are doing it. You will figure it out. You are smart and capable, and you are going to be amazing. I want to be like you, strong, independent, able to handle anything. Sweetheart, I was not always like this. I learned to be strong because I had to. You will too. After we hung up, I sat there in the barn with tears running down my face. Happy tears, grateful tears. My daughter was going to be a mother. I was going to be a grandmother. Life kept moving forward, whether I was ready or not. That afternoon, I drove into Whitefish for supplies. The hardware store, the feed store, the grocery store, the rhythm of ranch life that had become as natural as breathing. At the grocery store, I ran into Vanessa Sterling. We had developed an uneasy friendship over the past 3 years. Not close exactly, but cordial, based on mutual respect and the shared knowledge that we had both survived our own personal wars. She was 55 now, I realized. 3 years older than when she had first knocked on my door with that bright, cold smile. But she looked younger somehow, less brittle, more at peace. "Claire," she said, loading organic vegetables into her cart. "I was hoping I would run into you. I have a favor to ask." "What kind of favor?" "I am thinking about starting a business. Native plant nursery. Specializing in Montana wildflowers and grasses for landscaping. I know you protected your land with a conservation easement. I was hoping you might let me collect seeds from your property. For propagation." I studied her. 3 years ago, this woman had tried to destroy me. Now she was asking for help building a dream. "What percentage of the business would I get?" I asked. She blinked. I was not offering a business partnership, just asking to collect seeds. "Vanessa, you want to build a business on plants from my land. That makes me an investor whether we formalize it or not. So let me ask again. What percentage are you offering?" A slow smile spread across her face. "You have gotten hard, Claire Abbott." "I have gotten smart. There is a difference." We negotiated right there in the produce section. 20% equity in exchange for exclusive seed collection rights on my property. She would do all the work. I would provide the raw materials and business advice. We shook hands over the organic lettuce. "You know what is funny?" Vanessa said. 3 years ago, I hated you. Now you are one of the only people I trust." Funny how that works. Driving home, I thought about how much had changed. Not just for me, for all of us. Vanessa had gone from desperate and controlling to confident and building. Margaret Hayes had become one of my closest friends. Tom Chen and I served together on the County Land Conservation Board. The community that had tried to destroy me had become, against all odds, actually a community. But not everything was smooth. That night, Caleb came over for dinner. I made roast chicken and root vegetables. We ate on the porch even though it was cold, wrapped in blankets and watching the stars come out. "I need to talk to you about something," he said. His tone made me nervous. "Okay." "My daughter called, Rachel. She lives in Seattle, has 2 kids. Her husband left her. She is struggling. Asking if she can come stay with me for a while, her and the kids." "Of course she can. Caleb, that is not even a question." "It means I would not be able to spend as much time here. At the ranch, with you. The kids are 6 and 8. They need stability, attention. I would need to be there for them." I reached over and took his hand. "Caleb, I am not going to fall apart because you need to help your family. We will figure it out." "You are sure?" "I am sure. Family comes first, always." But after he left that night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling and acknowledged the small voice of fear in my chest. The voice that said I was about to lose him, that this slow, careful love we had built was about to crumble. I told that voice to shut up, but it did not listen. Rachel and her kids moved into Caleb's house 2 weeks later. I met them at a casual lunch in Whitefish. Rachel was 35, exhausted, and trying hard to hold herself together. The kids were shy and confused and clearly traumatized by their parents' divorce. "Dad talks about you all the time," Rachel said. "Thank you for being patient with him. I know he is not easy." "None of us are easy," I said. Over the next month, I saw Caleb maybe twice a week. Quick dinners, brief phone calls. He was consumed with helping Rachel find a job, enrolling the kids in school, rebuilding their lives. I understood. I really did. But I also felt the creeping loneliness of sleeping alone again, of eating meals by myself, of ranch work without his company. Margaret came over one evening and found me crying in the kitchen. "What happened?" she asked. "Nothing happened. That is the problem. I thought I was fine alone. I spent 3 years learning to be independent, and now Caleb is busy with his family and I am falling apart. What is wrong with me?" She sat down and took my hand. "Claire, there is nothing wrong with you. You are allowed to miss someone. Needing people does not make you weak. I should be past this. You are never past needing connection. Age does not cure loneliness." She stayed for dinner. We drank wine and talked about her grandchildren and my upcoming grandmother's status and everything except the ache in my chest. But that night, alone again, I had to face it. I was lonely, desperately, achingly lonely. And I did not know what to do about it. In November, a developer contacted me. His name was Marcus Whitfield, 60-something, expensive suit, practiced smile. He wanted to meet about a business proposition. We met at a coffee shop in Kalispell. He slid a folder across the table. "Mrs. Abbott, I represent Mountain Vista Development Corporation. We build luxury eco-resorts throughout the Rocky Mountain states. We are interested in purchasing 80 acres of your property, the eastern section, away from your house and the road. My property is under conservation easement. It cannot be developed. We are aware. We are prepared to offer you $3.2 million. With that kind of money, you could buy out the conservation easement and still have significant funds left over." $3.2 million. I stared at him. "Mr. Whitfield, you cannot buy out a conservation easement. Once it is in place, it is permanent. That is the whole point. Everything is negotiable, Mrs. Abbott. The Montana Land Trust is a nonprofit. They operate on donations. A significant donation from us, combined with an offer to protect twice as much land elsewhere, and I am confident they would release this particular parcel. And if I am not interested in negotiating?" His smile never wavered. "Then we would be disappointed, but we would respect your decision." He left his card. I threw it away before I even left the coffee shop. But that night, I pulled it out of the trash and stared at it. $3.2 million. I could pay off the ranch entirely, set up trust funds for Sophie's baby and Ben's future children, never worry about money again. I could also destroy everything my father had protected, everything I had fought for, everything the land represented. I called Jordan Harper. "They cannot actually buy out the conservation easement, can they?" "Legally, no. It is permanent. But Claire, these developers are persistent. They will look for loopholes, file nuisance lawsuits, make your life difficult hoping you will cave." So what do I do? Document everything. Do not engage with them. And if they harass you, we get a restraining order. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus Whitfield called me 6 times, left messages, sent emails, each one slightly more aggressive than the last. "Mrs. Abbott, I hope you will reconsider our generous offer." "Mrs. Abbott, we are prepared to increase our offer to $3.5 million. "Mrs. Abbott, surely you understand that holding onto land you cannot fully use is wasteful." I did not respond to any of them. Then the county inspector showed up. "Mrs. Abbott, we have received complaints about your cattle operation. Allegations of improper waste management, insufficient water access for livestock, and possible zoning violations." I stared at him. "My cattle operation has been inspected annually for 3 years. We have never had a violation." I understand, but I am required to investigate all complaints. May I see your facilities? I showed him everything: the pastures, the water tanks, the manure management system, the permits and licenses. He walked the property for 2 hours, took photos, made notes. Mrs. Abbott, I see no violations. Everything is in order. Better than most operations, actually. I will file my report stating the complaints were unfounded. Can you tell me who filed the complaints? I am not supposed to, but since they were clearly false, I can tell you they came from Mountain Vista Development Corporation. Harassment, plain and simple. I called Jordan again. They are coming after me. I know. I am drafting a cease and desist letter. If they continue, we will pursue legal action for harassment. But the harassment escalated. Someone cut the fence on the eastern boundary. 30 head of cattle got out. It took me and Caleb and 3 neighbors an entire day to round them up. Someone filed a false complaint with the EPA about water contamination. Another investigation. Another waste of time. Someone started a rumor that I was planning to subdivide the ranch despite the conservation easement. The Montana Land Trust had to issue a statement clarifying that this was impossible. I was under siege again, just like 3 years ago with the HOA. Except this time, the enemy had more money and fewer scruples. One night in early December, I woke to the sound of vehicles on my property. Multiple trucks, headlights sweeping across my bedroom window. I grabbed my phone and called 911. Then I called Caleb. Someone is on the property. Multiple vehicles. I am scared. I am on my way. Stay inside. Lock the doors. By the time the sheriff arrived, the vehicles were gone, but they had left evidence. Tire tracks all over the eastern pasture, sections of fence cut, survey stakes driven into the ground like they were marking boundaries. The deputy took photos, wrote a report, promised to investigate. Mrs. Abbott, do you have any idea who might have done this? Mountain Vista Development Corporation. They have been harassing me for weeks. Do you have proof? Just a pattern of behavior. They want my land. I refuse to sell. Now they are trying to intimidate me. The deputy looked skeptical. These are serious allegations against a major corporation. And this is serious trespassing and vandalism on my property. Caleb arrived 20 minutes later. Rachel and the kids were with him. He had not wanted to leave them alone. Claire, are you okay? I am fine, angry but fine. He walked the property with a flashlight, found the survey stakes, pulled them out of the ground with his bare hands. They are surveying your land, like they already own it. They do not own anything, and they never will. Rachel stayed with the kids in the truck while Caleb and I walked the fence line, checking for more damage. The December air was bitter cold. Our breath came out in clouds. This is not going to stop, Caleb said. Not until you give them what they want or make it too expensive to keep fighting. I am not giving them anything. Then we make it expensive. The next morning, I called a press conference. Jordan thought I was crazy. Claire, going public could backfire. It could make you look paranoid or difficult. Or it could expose what they are doing, put public pressure on them to back off. I contacted the local newspapers, the radio stations, anyone who would listen. 10 reporters showed up at the ranch. Not a huge crowd, but enough. I stood on my porch with the mountains behind me and told my story. 3 years ago, I inherited this ranch from my father. I fought to keep it, won the right to charge easement fees for the road that crosses my property, protected the land with a conservation easement so it could never be developed. I thought that would be the end of the fight, but I was wrong. I detailed everything: the developer's offers, the harassment, the false complaints, the trespassing, the intimidation. I am a 59-year-old widow. I am tired of fighting, but I am more tired of being pushed around. This land is protected. Legally. Permanently. Mountain Vista Development Corporation needs to accept that and move on. The story ran in every local paper, made the evening news in Missoula and Great Falls, went viral on local social media. The response was overwhelming. Support flooded in from environmental groups, from other ranchers who had dealt with developer harassment, from women who had taken my workshops and wanted to return the favor. The Montana Land Trust issued a statement affirming that the conservation easement was permanent and unbreakable. The county commissioners publicly stated they would not approve any development permits for my property. Even Glacier Ridge Estates residents rallied to my defense. Tom Chen organized a petition supporting my right to refuse development. Over 200 people signed it. "We know what it is like to fight Claire Abbott," the petition read. "We lost, but we also learned that she is fair and principled. If she says this land should stay wild, we believe her." But Marcus Whitfield was not done. 2 days after the press conference, I received a certified letter. Mountain Vista Development Corporation was suing me for defamation, claiming my public statements had damaged their reputation and cost them business opportunities. They were demanding $5 million in damages. I called Jordan immediately. "This is a SLAPP suit," she said. "Strategic lawsuit against public participation. They are trying to silence you by drowning you in legal costs. It is bullying, pure and simple." Can they win? No, everything you said was true and documented, but defending against it will be expensive. Maybe $75,000 in legal fees. $75,000. I had it. Barely. But it would wipe out a huge chunk of my savings. "Do it," I said. "I am not backing down." The lawsuit made the news too. And this time, the backlash against Mountain Vista was fierce. Environmental organizations filed amicus briefs supporting me. The Montana Attorney General opened an investigation into the company's harassment tactics. Other landowners came forward with similar stories of intimidation. Within 3 weeks, Mountain Vista quietly dropped the lawsuit. Marcus Whitfield called me one last time. "Mrs. Abbott, you have made your point. You have embarrassed my company publicly. I hope you are satisfied." "I will be satisfied when you leave me alone." "We are done here, but I want you to know that you are sitting on a fortune and refusing to monetize it. That is foolish." "That is called having values. You should try it sometime." He hung up. I never heard from Mountain Vista Development Corporation again. But the fight had taken a toll. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, questioning whether holding on to this land was worth the constant battle. Caleb found me sitting in the barn one afternoon, crying. "Talk to me," he said. "I am so tired. Every time I think I can just live my life, someone else comes along trying to take it from me. The HOA, my own daughter, now developers. When does it end?" "When you decide it ends, when you sell and walk away, or when you accept that this is the price of owning something valuable. I do not know if I am strong enough to keep paying that price." He sat down beside me on the hay bale. "Claire, 3 years ago you had nothing but debt and grief. Now you have savings, income, purpose, and land that will be protected forever. You built that. You fought for it. Do not let one more battle make you forget how far you have come." He was right. I knew he was right. But knowing and feeling were two different things. Christmas came. Sophie and Jake flew out from Boston. Ben drove up from Colorado with Mara. They were engaged now, planning a summer wedding. We all gathered at the ranch, cooked a huge dinner, decorated a tree, pretended everything was normal. But Sophie pulled me aside on Christmas Eve. "Mom, you look exhausted. What is going on?" I told her about the developers, the harassment, the lawsuit, the toll it was taking. "Mom, why do not you just sell? You have proven your point. You have won. You do not have to keep fighting." "If I sell, what was it all for? The lawsuits with the HOA, the fight with you over the will, the conservation easement. All of it becomes meaningless if I just give up when it gets hard. Or maybe all of it taught you that you are strong enough to make any choice you want, including the choice to walk away." I thought about that for a long time. Sophie was right. I had proven I could stand on my own, fight my own battles, build my own life. Maybe holding onto the ranch was not about strength anymore. Maybe it was about stubbornness. But when I looked out at the land, at the peaks of the Flathead Range in the distance, at the road winding through the pines, I knew I was not ready to let go. Not yet. On New Year's Eve, Caleb and I drove up to a ridge overlook on the northern edge of the property. We sat in his truck with the heater running and watched the valley below. "What are your resolutions?" he asked. "To stop fighting so hard, to accept help when I need it, to remember that I do not have to do everything alone." I looked at him. "What about you?" "To tell you something I have been afraid to say." My heart started beating faster. "What?" "I love you, Claire. I have loved you for 2 years. But I have been afraid to say it because I did not want to scare you away. But life is short, and we are not getting any younger, and I am tired of being afraid." Tears filled my eyes. "Caleb, I love you too. I have for a long time. I was just too scared to admit it." "What are we scared of?" "Losing each other. Like we lost Lisa and Richard. Loving someone means risking that kind of pain again." "Yes, but it also means not being alone. Claire, we are both going to die someday. That is guaranteed. But we could spend whatever time we have left together, really together. What do you think?" I thought about Richard, about the 30 years we had together, about how I would not trade a single moment of that time, even knowing how much it hurt to lose him. "I think I am ready to stop being scared." We kissed as the valley below us lit up with fireworks from the town of Whitefish, celebrating the new year, celebrating new beginnings. The winter passed. Rachel and the kids moved into their own apartment in Whitefish. Caleb came back to the ranch more often. We settled into a new rhythm, more intentional, more committed. In March, Sophie had her baby, a girl, Emma Rose, 8 pounds, healthy, perfect. I flew to Boston and held my granddaughter and cried. This tiny human who would never know Richard, who would grow up in a world I could not imagine, who carried my blood and my father's blood and generations of stubborn survivors. "She is beautiful," I whispered. "She is ours," Sophie said. "And Mom, I want her to know the ranch, to spend summers there, to understand where she comes from. She is always welcome, for as long as I am alive." Holding Emma, I understood why I had fought so hard to keep the land. Not for me, not really. For her, for the granddaughter I did not know I would have, for the great-grandchildren who would come after, for all the future generations who deserved to know wild places still existed. The land was not mine. I was just its temporary guardian. Flying back to Montana, I looked out at the country below and felt a sense of peace I had not felt in months. The developers were gone. The lawsuits were over. The easement was secure. I had built something that would last beyond me. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Back at the ranch, Caleb was waiting. "How is the baby?" "Perfect," Absolutely perfect. And how are you? Tired, happy, overwhelmed, grateful. He pulled me into his arms. I missed you. I missed you too. That night, we sat on the porch, and I told him what I had realized in Boston. This place is not about me anymore. It is about what comes next. The legacy, the land, the generations who will walk this ground after I am gone. So what does that mean for us? It means I want you to be part of it, part of the legacy, part of the future. Claire, are you asking me to move in? I am asking you to build a life here with me, for however many years we have left. I am not talking about marriage, just partnership, real partnership. He smiled. I thought you would never ask. We were both too old for games, too aware of how quickly time passed, too grateful for whatever days we had left. Caleb moved into the ranch in April, brought his clothes and his tools and his memories of Lisa. She would have liked you, he said one night. Lisa, she would have said you are exactly what I needed. Richard would have liked you too. He would have said thank you for taking care of me. We were not replacing our dead spouses. We were honoring them by choosing to live fully instead of just existing. By my 60th birthday in May, the ranch felt complete. Caleb managed the cattle. I managed the business. Emma helped with the day-to-day work. The workshops continued. The easement income kept arriving. The land stayed wild. Vanessa's plant nursery was thriving. She had collected thousands of native seeds from my property and was growing them in a greenhouse she had built behind her house. I am going to call it Wild Roots Native Nursery, she said, and I want you to be listed as a founding partner. Vanessa, I'm just providing seeds. You are providing more than seeds. You are providing belief. When everyone else thought I was broken, you saw potential. That is worth more than money. On my 60th birthday, Caleb threw a party at the ranch. 50 people came. My children and their partners, Margaret and her family, Tom Chen and his wife, Vanessa and her husband, women from my workshops, neighbors from Glacier Ridge. Even Kyle Sterling, who was finishing his forestry degree and doing well. Thank you for giving me a second chance, he said. I would not be here without it. As the sun set and people gathered around a bonfire, Ben stood up to give a toast. To my mother, who taught me that 60 is not old, that starting over is always possible. That strength is not about never falling down. It is about getting back up. Everyone raised their glasses. I looked around at these people, this community that had once been my enemy and was now my family. And I realized something. I had spent my entire life trying to belong to someone else, to Richard, to my children, to my father's memory. But here, finally, I belonged to myself. The ranch was mine, the choices were mine, the future was mine. And that was worth every battle I had fought to get here. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, Caleb and I stood on the ridge overlooking the valley. Happy birthday, he said. Thank you for all of this, for everything. Claire, you built this life yourself. I'm just lucky enough to share it. I leaned against him and watched the stars come out over Montana. 60 years old, 3 years since the judge's ruling that secured my future. And I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Finally. Completely. Home. 5 years is enough time to forget who you used to be. At 65, I stood in the same kitchen where my father had made coffee every morning for 60 years. The same wooden table, the same window looking out at the Rockies, but everything else had changed. The easement income had been arriving for 8 years now, almost $800,000 total. The medical debt was a distant memory. My savings had grown to $420,000. The ranch ran itself with a rhythm that felt as natural as seasons changing. Caleb and I had been together for 5 years, living in the house my father built, sleeping in the bed where he died, building a life on top of the foundation he left behind. We were not married. Neither of us saw the point. We had both done marriage, both buried spouses we loved. This thing we had built was different, quieter, based on companionship and shared work and the knowledge that every day together was a gift we had not expected. I woke that morning to find him already up, making coffee in the pre-dawn darkness. He did that now, rose early to check on the cattle before the sun came up. At 67, he moved a little slower than he used to. We both did, but we moved. "Morning," I said, wrapping my arms around him from behind. He covered my hands with his. "Morning, sleep okay." Like the dead. We drank coffee on the porch as the sun came up over the mountains. This was our ritual, had been for 5 years. No matter what else happened during the day, we had this. Silence and coffee and the Montana dawn. My phone buzzed, a text from Sophie. "Mom, Emma is asking when she can come visit the ranch again. She talks about it constantly." Emma was 5 now, a bright, fearless little girl who loved horses and dirt and anything involving the outdoors. She spent 2 weeks every summer at the ranch, learning to ride, helping feed chickens, following me and Caleb around like a devoted puppy. Tell her June, 2 whole weeks. I'm already counting the days. Sophie had another baby now, a boy, Liam, 2 years old. She had moved from Boston to Denver, closer to me but still independent, running her own law practice specializing in property rights and estate planning. My daughter had become someone I admired, not just loved, admired. Ben had married Mara 3 years ago. They lived in Missoula now, both working for Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. No kids yet, but they had time. Ben was only 33, still figuring out what kind of life he wanted to build. I finished my coffee and went to feed the horses. We had 6 now, 3 for working cattle, 3 for pleasure riding. One of them, a gentle mare named Willow, was Emma's, waiting for her annual visit. The ranch had become something beyond just my home. It was a destination, a refuge, a place where people came to remember what mattered. The women's workshops had evolved too. What started as monthly meetings at the community college had become a residential weekend program. Women came from all over Montana, some from neighboring states. 3 days of intensive work on financial literacy, self-advocacy, and rebuilding after loss. I had hired help, 2 other women who had been through their own transformations. Together, we created a space where women could be vulnerable and strong at the same time. Margaret Hayes had been part of the program until last year when her health started failing. She was 73 now, heart problems, declining mobility, but her mind was sharp and her spirit was fierce. I visited her every Thursday, brought groceries, sat with her, listened to her stories about her late husband and her children and the life she had lived. "You know what I am most grateful for," she said one Thursday afternoon as we sat in her living room. "That I got to see you become who you are. When you first moved here, you were so scared, so uncertain. Now look at you, running a ranch, teaching other women, living with a good man. You did it, Claire. You built a whole life from nothing." "Not from nothing, from what my father left me." "Your father left you land and money. You built everything else yourself." She was right, but it had taken me 65 years to believe it. In October, Vanessa's native plant nursery was featured in a statewide magazine. Wild Roots had become one of the premier sources for Montana native plants. Landscapers and restoration projects across 3 states bought from her. She sent me a check for my percentage. 20% of the profits, $12,000. I called her immediately. Vanessa, this is too much. That is what we agreed on. 20%. You are a partner. I just let you collect seeds. You did all the work. Claire, you gave me more than seeds. You gave me a second chance when I did not deserve it. You believed I could be more than the person who tried to destroy you. That is worth more than any percentage. The check sat on my kitchen table for a week before I deposited it. Not because I did not need the money, but because it represented something I still struggled to accept. That I deserved good things, that I had earned them, that my value was not measured by how much I sacrificed for others. In November, I got a call from a documentary filmmaker. She was making a film about women over 50 rebuilding their lives. She had heard about my story and wanted to interview me. I almost said no. The idea of being on camera, telling my story to strangers, felt exposing. But Caleb convinced me. Your story could help people. Is not that what you have been doing with the workshops? Helping women see that starting over is possible. The filmmaker came in December. A young woman, maybe 30, with kind eyes and expensive camera equipment. She sat up in my living room and asked me to tell her everything. I talked for 3 hours. About Richard's death, about inheriting the ranch, about the lawsuits with the HOA and my own daughter, about learning to stand on my own, about finding love again with Caleb, about becoming a grandmother, about building something that would last beyond me. When I finished, she was crying. That was beautiful. Thank you for trusting me with your story. When will the documentary be finished? Probably a year. We are interviewing women across the country. Your segment will be about 20 minutes of the final film. After she left, I felt strange, exposed, like I had given away pieces of myself I could not get back. But Caleb held me that night and said, "You just gave permission for other women to do what you did, to fight for themselves. That is not exposure. That is generosity." Christmas came. Sophie and Jake brought the kids. Ben and Mara came up from Missoula. We filled the house with noise and laughter and the chaos of small children. Emma ran through the house yelling about horses and snow, and when could she go sledding? Liam toddled after her, trying to keep up with his big sister. Watching them, I thought about my father, about how he never got to meet these children, never got to see what his stubborn refusal to sell that easement had created. But maybe he knew. Maybe wherever he was, he could see that the land he protected was now protecting his great-grandchildren, giving them a place to run wild, to connect with something bigger than themselves. On Christmas Eve, after the kids were in bed, the adults sat around the fireplace drinking wine. Sophie raised her glass. To Mom, who taught us that it is never too late to start over. That strength is not about never falling, it is about getting back up. To Claire, everyone echoed. I looked around at my children and their partners, at Caleb beside me, at the life we had all built together. I want to tell you something, I said. I have been working on my estate plan, updating my will. Everyone got quiet. The ranch will stay in the family. Ben, you will inherit the property and the house. Sophie, you will get equivalent value in my savings and investments. But there are conditions. What conditions? Ben asked. The conservation easement stays in place. Forever, this land can never be developed, never subdivided. It stays wild. If you do not want that responsibility, Ben, we can set up a trust that maintains it as a nature preserve. But either way, it stays protected. Mom, I want the ranch. I have always wanted it, and I promise to protect it the way you and Grandpa did. There is more. I want Emma to have first option to take it over when she is old enough, if she wants it. This place should go to someone who loves it, not just inherits it out of obligation. Sophie wiped her eyes. Mom, that is perfect. Emma talks about the ranch constantly. I think she might actually want to be a rancher when she grows up. She is 5. She might change her mind. Maybe, but you planted the seed. Later that night, Caleb and I stood on the porch looking at the stars. You did good, he said, planning for what comes after. It feels morbid, planning for my own death. It is not morbid. It is responsible. You are making sure everything you built continues. Caleb, what about you? We have been together 5 years. You should be in the will too. I do not need to be in the will. I have my own place in Whitefish. I am fine. This ranch is your legacy, not mine. But you helped build it. The cattle operation, the business, all of it. I helped, but it was always yours, Claire, and I am okay with that. I leaned against him, feeling the solid warmth of his body. I love you. I love you too. In January, I turned 65. Medicare kicked in. I was officially a senior citizen. The thought was surreal. 65, old age, except I did not feel old. I felt alive in a way I never had when I was younger. Like every day was sharp and clear and precious, because I knew it was finite. Caleb threw me a small party, just close friends. Margaret, though she was getting frailer. Vanessa and her husband, Tom Chen and his wife, a few women from the workshops. We ate cake and drank champagne and told stories about getting older. You know what is funny? Vanessa said. 10 years ago, I would have been horrified to turn 60. Now I am 58 and I am grateful for every year. That is because you are not the same person you were 10 years ago, I said. None of us are, thank God. That night, alone with Caleb after everyone left, he gave me a gift. A leather journal with my initials embossed on the cover. What is this for? For your story. You have been telling other people's stories in your workshops, teaching them to stand up for themselves, but you have never written down your own story. I think you should. I opened the journal. The first page was blank, waiting. I do not know if I am a writer. You do not have to be a writer. You just have to be honest. I started that night, sitting at my father's kitchen table, writing about Richard's death, about the inheritance, about the scared, broken woman who moved to Montana with nothing but debt and grief. I wrote a little every night, some nights just a paragraph, some nights several pages. It felt like exorcism, getting the story out of my body and onto paper where it could not hurt me anymore. In February, Margaret died. She went peacefully in her sleep. No pain, no struggle, just here one day and gone the next. The funeral was packed, over 200 people. She had touched so many lives in her 73 years. I gave a eulogy through tears. Margaret was the first person in Glacier Ridge to see me as a person instead of an enemy. When everyone else was ready to fight, she asked questions. She listened. She chose compassion over anger. She taught me that you can disagree with someone's actions and still treat them with dignity. I will miss her every day. After the funeral, Tom Chen pulled me aside. Claire, I want you to know that Margaret talked about you constantly in her last months, about how proud she was of you, how grateful she was that you showed her community what real strength looked like. I am going to miss her so much. We all are, but her legacy lives on in the way she taught us to treat each other, with kindness, with understanding, even when we disagree. Driving home from the funeral, I thought about legacy, about what we leave behind when we are gone. Margaret left kindness. My father left land. Richard left me the freedom to discover who I could be without him. What would I leave? I wrote about that question in my journal that night. I hope I leave the land protected, the ranch thriving, my grandchildren with a place to connect to something wild, other women with the knowledge that starting over is possible, Caleb with the memory of being loved completely. Maybe that is enough. Spring came early that year. The snow melted in March. The creeks ran high with runoff. Wildflowers bloomed in April, turning the meadows into a riot of color. Emma came for her annual visit in June. She was 6 now, all legs and energy and fearless curiosity. I taught her to ride Willow by herself. No lead rope, just her and the horse and the open meadow. Watching her gallop across the field, her laughter floating back to me on the wind, I felt something shift in my chest. This was why I had fought so hard. Not for me, for her, for all the Emmas who would come after, who would ride these horses and swim in this creek and learn that wild places still existed. One afternoon, Emma and I were sitting by the creek watching the water rush past. "Grandma, will this place always be here?" "Yes, sweetheart, it will always be here." "Promise?" "I promise. Even when I am gone, this land will still be here, for you and your children and your grandchildren. I want to live here when I grow up. Can I?" "If you still want to when you are older, yes. This place will be waiting for you." She threw her arms around me. "I love you, Grandma." "I love you too, Emma Bear." The nickname slipped out before I realized. Claire Bear. That is what my father had called me. Now I was calling Emma the same thing. Generations, connected by love and land, and a stubborn refusal to give up. In August, the documentary premiered at a film festival in Missoula. The filmmaker invited me to attend, to do a Q&A after the screening. I almost said no again, but Caleb and Ben and Mara all said they would come with me, that I did not have to do it alone. The theater was packed, 300 people waiting to watch a film about women rebuilding their lives. When my segment came on, I watched myself on screen talking about Richard's death, about the ranch, about the lawsuits, about learning to stand alone. The woman on screen looked strong, confident, nothing like the terrified widow I remembered being. Had I really changed that much? Or had I always been that person, just buried under years of fear? After the film, the Q&A was supposed to last 30 minutes. It went for over an hour. Women stood up and shared their own stories, asked for advice, thanked me for being honest about how hard it was. One woman, maybe 60, stood up with tears in her eyes. "I am recently divorced after 35 years of marriage. I have no job skills, no savings. I am terrified. How did you get past the fear?" I thought about that question, really thought about it. I did not get past the fear. I learned to live with it. Fear is always there, but you can be scared and still move forward. You can be terrified and still make decisions. The fear does not go away. You just get better at not letting it stop you. The woman nodded, sat down, wiped her eyes. After the Q&A, a dozen women came up to talk to me, to shake my hand, to tell me their stories. I stayed until the last one left, until every story had been heard. Driving home that night, Caleb said, "You know you are famous now, right?" "I am not famous. I am just a woman who told her story." "You are a woman who gave permission for other women to tell theirs. That is powerful." That fall, I was invited to speak at conferences, women's groups, church gatherings, community colleges. I said yes to some and no to most. I was not trying to build a career as a motivational speaker. I just wanted to help where I could. But the speaking led to something unexpected. A literary agent reached out. She had seen the documentary. She wanted me to write a book. "Your story could help millions of women. Not just the hundreds who take your workshops. Millions. I am not a writer. You do not have to be. We would pair you with a ghostwriter, someone who would help you shape your journal entries and experiences into a narrative. I thought about it for a week, talked to Caleb, to Sophie and Ben, to Vanessa. Everyone said the same thing: do it. So I did. The book took a year to write. Working with the ghostwriter was strange at first. Sharing my journal, talking about Richard and my father and the painful parts I had tried to forget. But she was good. She knew how to take my rambling stories and shape them into something coherent, something that might actually help people. We called it The Road Home, one woman's journey from loss to legacy. It published when I was 67, a small print run, modest expectations. It sold out in 3 weeks. They printed more. It sold out again. Within 6 months, it was on regional bestseller lists. Women's groups were choosing it for book clubs. I was getting letters from readers all over the country. Women who had lost husbands, who had been left by the wayside after their children grew up, who had no idea who they were without someone else defining them. They saw themselves in my story, and it gave them hope. I went on a small book tour, 10 cities, mostly in the Mountain West. Caleb came with me to some of them, stayed home for others when the cattle needed attention. At every event, women asked the same question: how do I start over when I am terrified? And I gave them the same answer. You start scared, you stay scared, but you start anyway. But in the middle of the book tour, something happened that reminded me how fragile everything was. We were in Denver. I had just finished a reading at the Tattered Cover bookstore. Caleb and I were walking back to our hotel when he stumbled. Caleb. He put his hand to his chest. I am okay, just dizzy. But he was not okay. His face had gone gray, sweat beaded on his forehead. I got him to sit down on a bench, called 911. The ambulance came. They rushed him to the hospital. Heart attack, mild, the doctors said, but a warning. I sat in that hospital waiting room and felt the world tilt. Not again. I could not lose someone again. Not Caleb, not now. When they finally let me see him, he was hooked up to monitors, looking old and tired and mortal in a way I had never allowed myself to see before. I am sorry, he said. Do not apologize. Just promise me you are not going anywhere. I will try my best. They kept him for 3 days, put in a stent, prescribed medication, told him to reduce stress, eat better, exercise more. We canceled the rest of the book tour and went home to Montana. For the next month, I was terrified, watched him constantly, made him take his pills, forced him to rest. Claire, I am not made of glass, he said one morning. I had a heart attack. I did not die. You could have died. Yes, and I could die tomorrow, or in 10 years. We do not know. But I am not going to spend whatever time I have left being treated like an invalid. He was right, but it was hard to let go of the fear. Slowly, we found our rhythm again. He went back to working with the cattle, but less. We hired more help. Emma, now full-time, took on more responsibility. Caleb was 70 now. The heart attack had aged him, slowed him down, but he was still here, still beside me every morning on the porch, still the steady presence that had become as essential to me as breathing. By my 68th birthday, life had settled into a rhythm I could trust. The book continued to sell. The workshops continued. The ranch thrived. Emma visited every summer and talked more seriously each year about wanting to take over the ranch someday. We talked about mortality more openly now. When I die, Caleb said one night, I want you to know that these years with you have been the best of my life. Better than I ever thought possible after Lisa died. Do not talk about dying. Claire, I am 70. I have to talk about it, we both do. He was right, but I hated it. When you die, I will miss you every single day, but I will also be grateful we had this time. That is all anyone can ask for. The next year brought more changes. Ben and Mara had a baby, a boy, James, named after my father. Holding my grandson, I cried. Why are you crying, Mom? Ben asked. Because your grandfather never got to meet you, or your children, but his name lives on. His legacy lives on, that matters. Emma was 9 now, confident on horseback, helping with real ranch work, talking seriously about agricultural college when she grew up. Grandma, when you are gone, Uncle Ben is going to run the ranch, right? That is the plan. And when Uncle Ben is gone, can I have it? If you still want it when you're grown up, yes. I will always want it. This is the best place in the world. At 70, I knew I had maybe 20 years left if I was lucky, maybe less. The ranch was set up to continue without me. The conservation easement was permanent. The income stream was established. The next generation was ready. But I was not ready to let go. Not yet. I still woke up every morning grateful for another day. Still drank coffee with Caleb on the porch. Still taught workshops and wrote and worked the land. Still lived instead of just existed. One morning in late September, I walked up to the ridge overlook where Caleb and I had first told each other we loved each other. The same ridge where my father used to come to think. I stood there looking out at 160 acres of protected wilderness, at the road that had saved my life, at the mountains rising like ancient guardians. I thought about the scared, broken woman who had arrived here 15 years ago with nothing but debt and grief. She would not recognize the woman I had become. But my father would. He had known all along who I could be. That is why he left me this place, not to trap me, to free me. I pulled out my phone and called Sophie. Mom, everything okay? Everything is perfect. I just wanted to tell you that I am proud of you, of the woman you have become, of the mother you are, of everything. There was a pause. Mom, where is this coming from? From gratitude. I do not know how much time I have left. I wanted to make sure you knew. I know, Mom, and I am proud of you too. After we hung up, I called Ben and said the same thing. Then I just stood there breathing in the Montana air, feeling the sun on my face, listening to the wind in the pines. I had built something that would outlast me. The land was protected forever. The story was told. The next generation was ready. Whatever came next, I was ready for it. I walked back down to the ranch house where Caleb was making lunch, where the chickens were clucking and the horses were grazing and life was continuing the way it always had. Where did you go? He asked. Just up to the ridge, thinking. About what? About how far I have come, how much I have changed, how grateful I am for all of it. He pulled me into his arms. Me too. That night, I made the final entry in the journal he had given me 5 years earlier. I am 70 years old. I have been writing this journal for 5 years, trying to make sense of how I got from there to here, from the scared widow with nothing to the woman with everything. I do not have all the answers, but I have learned a few things. Starting over is possible at any age. Fear is not a reason to give up. You are stronger than you think. Asking for help is not weakness. Love is always worth the risk of loss. And land, real land, is worth fighting for. My father knew that. He spent his life protecting this place, not for himself, for me, for his great-grandchildren, for all the generations who would come after. I have done the same, protected it, shared it, made sure it will be here long after I am gone. That is legacy. Not money, not fame, not even the book or the workshops or the women I have helped. Legacy is knowing that something you loved will continue, that the fight was worth it, that you mattered. I mattered. It took me 70 years to believe that. But I believe it now. I closed the journal and put it in the drawer with my father's journals. Someday, Emma or James or some future great-grandchild would find them, would read about our lives, would understand why we fought so hard to keep this place wild. And maybe, if I was lucky, they would continue the fight. The road would still be there, winding through the pines, connecting the ranch to the world, providing income for whoever inherited it. But more than that, it would be a reminder that sometimes the thing you fight hardest for is the thing that saves you. That loss can become legacy. That fear can become freedom. And that home is not just a place. It is the life you build when you finally stop running from yourself. The next morning, I woke to find Caleb already up as usual, making coffee in the kitchen. At 72, he moved more slowly than he once had. His heart condition meant pills every morning, careful monitoring, acceptance of limits we both would have rather ignored. But he was here, still strong in the ways that mattered, still beside me. "Morning," I said, wrapping my arms around him. He turned and kissed my forehead. "Morning, I was just thinking." "About what?" "About how lucky I am, that I get to wake up here, with you, every day." I looked at him, this man who had shown up to fix my burst pipe in the freezing cold all those years ago, who had invited me into his life when I was still learning how to live in my own, who had loved me patiently while I figured out how to love him back. "We are both lucky," I said. We drank coffee on the porch as the sun came up, the ritual we had maintained for 5 years, would maintain for however many years we had left. I did not know how this story would end, if I would outlive Caleb or if he would outlive me, if Emma would really take over the ranch or if she would find a different path. But I knew this. The land was protected. The legacy was secure. The road would continue to provide for whoever needed it. And I had lived, really lived, not just existed through someone else's life. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything. I was 70 years old. And I was finally, completely, eternally home.